figured there was a culprit. It's like, oh, I probably wouldn't have even noticed, actually.
We're gonna share this.
That's just fine.
Sorry, Mayor, I think we're good to go now, so.
All right, welcome, everybody. This is the Lindon City Budget Kickoff Work Session. This is an open public meeting, so it's being recorded. We are here February 20th, 2025, to discuss all of the budgetary matters that we are looking to do as our goals for the fiscal year 2025 through 26. And we look forward to having all the information from our department heads. And I'll turn the agenda over to our Administrator, Adam Cowie, to proceed as follows on the agenda.
Thanks, Mayor. This is very, yeah, maybe just really quick,
Should we
just
do a
for
quick
the
roll call?
minutes, that would be great, yeah.
All right, we'll do a quick roll call, so let's start here.
Hooley, present. We're here. What do we say?
We are, you want us to?
Yeah.
No, we'll just do names. Adam Cowie.
Kristen Aaron.
Juan Garrido.
Mike Brower.
Steve Stewart.
Van Broderick.
Brian Hawes.
Heath Bateman.
Jake Hoyt.
Lincoln Jacobs.
All right.
Thank you very much. Before we turn this over to Kristen, Mike has a daughter playing in some basketball, high school basketball playoffs, and so he may need to take off here soon. So we're gonna have him give you a rundown on a department request he's looking at, and then we'll go back to the agenda, so.
Thank you. Appreciate you accommodating me. In our general plan, it gives some recommendations on projects, and one of those projects is looking at streetscape and gateway enhancements for our community. It talks about, coming up with a strategy for corridor improvements, looking at, like I said, curb appeal, streetscape, gateway designs, and in our general plan and in our 700 North Master Plan, it talks about, different ideas, gives you some precedent images there. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is if that's something you want to do, is look at State Street and 700 North and see if there's some, gateway improvements or streetscape improvements that we would like to do. We'd probably want to put a study together, have an architect look at, the streets, the gateways, the different corridors or corners of major streets, and see if there's some things we want to do. And so just wanted to get your feedback on that. You're probably looking at, 20 to 30,000 for a study, for an architect to really look at it and give us some good designs for things that we could do. And so. We can.
Do we have any of this kind of in our Center Street? Have we put any of these types of things yet? I know we've talked about that with various.
Like we have some landscaping going in.
And then the street lamps with the hanging basket and the arms for, banners and whatnot. So the idea is, do we want to create, years ago, council created the split rail vinyl fence as kind of, what could we have that people know they're not going to blink and miss Lindon, right?
Yeah.
They'll know it's Lindon. And the vinyl is worn out, been removed. It's no longer a requirement in our commercial corridors. But with our town center village, with the temple, with all that we have going on, our improvements on Center Street, this could be a really fantastic way to create a sense of identity and character that's a little bit consistent in the community. And so to have this kind of fleshed out and maybe some ideas, so it's not just hodgepodge as we make some improvements
Yeah.
here in the city.
I would be for that. The one sentence here that stands out to me is in order to clearly demarcate that one has arrived in Lindon. It doesn't feel like we have that really in place. And I think with the vision we have for the Lindon Village and, then therefore for the ends of State Street, just to kind of create those spaces where you obviously have left one place and come to our place. I'd very much like to see a lot of these things in place and would be supportive of that kind of study.
I'm one of those who it's I think it'd be cool in the context of what else is going on. It's like could be a low priority for me if there's like roads and pipes and
Yes.
things like that. I would have a priority over that than the cosmetic. But if it's like actually we're in a decent place with all of our things, I'd be like, yeah, this would be a cool next step. So in context, I could be a yes or later.
That is a good answer. I think I'm with Cole. I look at some of these studies and sometimes there's a lot of ideas and what we actually end up implementing isn't always what comes from those. I think about our 700 North Corridor plan and the thousands we spent on that. And I do think it was a helpful document for sure. I almost have a lot of confidence in those we have employed to just say if they saw something they really liked and wanted to put it in, I say let's save the 20,000. And Mike, I trust you 100%. You see something cool and want to put it in on 700 North, I think let's put the additional 20,000 from that towards that, and then we're only spending 180 instead of 200. Is kind of my thought, especially on something like a roadscape, But I also understand the importance of planning, and so I could probably get on board as well. So,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Kristen, I'll turn that over to you for budget calendar.
All right, in the packets, we have our budget calendar. Looks like a chart with a yellow line in the middle. And right now, we're working on getting the department head requests in. Adam's gonna bring it up. If it's,
I know, that's
Oh.
so far away. Binoculars.
I didn't make any extra copies, sorry. Is it not in anybody's? Adam said that
I don't
it,
see.
he
We
had a
emailed it.
digital. Yes, it was emailed, yes. All right, so we're doing the department head requests right now, and those are due on a week from Friday. Department heads, week from Friday, how's that going? Yeah? Okay. So I do need those on time because the next thing is March 11th. Is the tentative budget needs to be completed so we can get it into the staff report so that we can discuss it at the meeting on March 17th. And so that's when we'll have our first budget discussion and then adopt the tentative budget. And then we'll work to refine that as Adam and I meet with each department head, and then we'll have a first draft of the proposed budget, which we will bring to City Council on April 21st. And that is the one that's highlighted in yellow, City Council members and Mayor, so that we can have, we're focusing that meeting on a lot of the discussion, questions, and definitely feel free to reach out to me or any of the department heads on any questions that you have in particular. We just want to get as much smoothed out by April 21st as we can, and then finalize the proposed budget, which will be brought to City Council on May 19th, and then the final budget on June 16th. Does anyone have any questions on this calendar? Yep, we've done this all before.
Yeah, so any really significant changes or big ticket items, we want to have those known by April 21st. That would be kind of our target. So, thank you, Kristen. We will go through, I just wanted to highlight some of our more significant revenues in the city and just give you a quick update on where we're at. Overall, a very good financial picture for Lindon. We've got some great things on the horizon with 700 North and the Kia dealership coming in. Let's see, Steve asked me earlier today if that's shown up on our sales tax report, and I don't think it has yet. And so I did want to,
What's not showing up?
Kia.
Kia.
Yeah, usually it takes a couple months from when they've reported anything for it to show up on our monthly reports from the state, but might be good if, now that I'm saying it out loud, do you want to have Marcy follow up with them and make sure that they're reporting correctly? That would be great on the business license.
They
Okay,
just need to make sure to report under that sales tax number.
yeah.
Make sure it's not going to American.
So this graph is something I've shown before. This is a multi-year history of sales tax revenues. Each of these blue spikes, these blue points, are a month that we receive sales tax from the state after being paid here in Lindon. And so, as a reminder, we get about of the sales tax that's collected for Lindon's tax, we're getting about 65% of that back. And so we are an exporter of a sales tax. It's distributed throughout the state based on population. And so we don't keep the full amount that is produced here. Yeah, we're allowed to collect 1% on that. And so we're keeping about 65% of that 1%. Did I say that right? All right. I did want to highlight the volatility. The red line that's shown there is just the trend line. It's smoothing out these spikes. But the last couple of fiscal years, we've seen more what I'm calling volatility, highs and low lows, pretty significant changes over the last couple months in those years. And but that being said, we had less revenue than in our 23 fiscal year, this last 24 year. However, still one of the highest years we've ever had. And so another thing that I think is interesting on this, in the Great Recession, if you look back to 2009, we really dipped pretty low. To get back to where we were pre-recession, it took, I believe it's 6 to 7 years to get back in where we were in sales tax revenue. And so a long recovery, if we have a major recession, is a potential. Any questions on sales tax? It is our largest revenue source, and we're very dependent on healthy sales tax to fund city operations. The next chart there that was in that email I sent is our property tax. I wanted to have just a quick discussion on this. We, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a slower growth in property tax, and it has even seen a few years where it's decreased. And as we've called and talked to the county several times about this, what we're understanding is even though we have new growth that is occurring, they've indicated that we have older properties that are less valuable. And so we're seeing new growth appear, but a drop in value in other properties. And as you can see in our 23-24 fiscal year, we actually had a decrease in property tax revenue. Went down slightly. So over the last few years, it's gone up and then down and then up and then down as it's gradually increasing. Kristen made an interesting comment the other day. We don't see significant spikes in property tax over these years when we had things like Anderson Farms develop, where we had hundreds of new homes built. I couldn't look at that graph and tell you what year that is. And so it's not, even though we have new buildings and new businesses and things coming online, it's hard to say which year those are in and how much they're benefiting us when we have older properties that are decreasing in value.
How does that work with the certified tax rate?
So the certified tax rate is meant to be held constant, and not the rate, but the amount of money, amount of revenue that the city receives. So unless the city council goes through a truth and taxation hearing, the county comes up with a new rate every year and provides that to us and says, this is the new rate that will give you approximately the same amount of revenue as you had last year. And
I understand that, so why is that not, how is decreasing property values producing less sales or property tax?
say that again.
I'm wondering if they're taking that into account, the older properties decreasing, because there's not a lot of decrease in value. I mean, the land is appreciating even if a building may be getting older. So I don't know if the county is taking that into account when they just think, oh, everything is increasing, the market is increasing property values, so we need to decrease the certified tax rate. Another thing that could be affecting when we're going down is just collections, people not paying their property tax. And then it comes in the next year, and then, so, that goes up, so.
So they're saying that some properties are worth less than they used to be? Am I understanding?
It doesn't make any sense.
I'm like, I don't think that
Right.
is right.
I understand the question, and we've asked the same thing, and their answer is basically yes. And that's how they're indicating that we're dropping in some years. And so is that values have decreased. And it doesn't mean that that's the market value.
It's a tax valuation.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the tax valuation. So in this green chart that's here, this certified tax rate by calendar year. So I don't know if everybody remembers the early 2010 through 13 valuations from the the assessor's office got really high, and there was a lot of pushback, and they went back and decreased those valuations. Does anybody remember this? Mm-hmm. And so what you can see is our rate spiked there in those years. It went up, and then they are like, oh, we're going to back off, and so as we've grown as a city, the rate has decreased.
But also, during the recession, the property values were decreasing at that time. And so, to counteract that, the rate had to go up.
Yeah, that was part of that spike there. And I think then they got too high, and they backed off of that, is what I recall. But so property tax currently makes up about, from my recollection, I think we're about 16% of our revenue. And that share of our total revenue pie is getting smaller and smaller. The nice thing about property tax is, even though there are some instances of late or non-payers, it's very stable revenue. We get 96, 97% of those payers are paying that. And so, unlike sales tax, which is very volatile. And so property tax, very stable, very consistent, typically. And when I first started here 20 years ago, it was closer to 24% of our total budget. And so it's shrinking as far as the percentage of our revenue. So just want to bring that to your attention. It looks like this year, we are the second lowest property tax rate in Utah County next to Eagle Mountain, which is a great thing. That's a good thing that we're able to cover things with sales tax, but in a volatile economy or a recession, we end up having challenges. So just want to make sure you're aware of those things. So, let's see, franchise tax is another significant revenue source. These are taxes that are passed through typically from utility companies that we're charging for their use of our public right-of-ways, roads, and those are usually passed on to customers and paid through utility bills. Utility charges are another significant revenue source. This fiscal year, we're projected to bring in $7.8 million on utility charges, and those would then go back primarily into those enterprise funds that help pay for those services. So, park tax is one that we haven't spoken about a lot this last fiscal year as far as the distribution. Below there, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of how we've allocated those funds. 32% of that is currently going into the Parks and Recs facility maintenance, 20% into the aquatic center improvements, 20% into parks and trails improvements, 18% into other things such as debt service for the aquatic center, mini grants, our contingency fund, and then 10% into the community center improvements. And so if there's concerns about those percentages, let us know. We last updated that in 2023. So, any questions on any of those items there under revenues?
How much of it goes to debt service? Do you have that one broken out specifically?
It's a set amount of $85,000.
Moving on, we'll have Juan give us a rundown on the outlook for proposed utility rates this coming fiscal year.
Okay, I have a packet there for you. The first one I want you to find is this little paper with the ORM WRF, stands for Water Reclamation Facility. This is the latest estimate I received from ORM as far as the upgrade plan that they're proposing. We just finished paying the 2024. We paid them $1.325 million, and the next project will be 25 and 26 combined. So that comes, our portion is about $6.8 million. We own 12.2% of the capacity at Orem. As you can see at the bottom total, they're planning on doing these upgrades through 2032. The cost for the whole project is $151 million just to keep up, which is a lower price tag than a lot of our places around us. TSSD, they are in the probably billion by the time they get done. Provo is in the 700 to 900 million. So it's bad, but we're not as bad as could be. So this reflects in our, in the next paper I want to show you is this packet that has the charts and our proposed rate fees for utilities. I want to point out the first big paper is our the stormwater fund, and we're finishing 2025. Some of the funds that we have of the capital, it's 1.4 million. We have not spent all that money this year, so I foresee that whatever we don't use in the previous year, that we will carry forward so we can finish those projects in 2026. But new projects for 2026, it's $1.5 million there. The chart that you see above, the black line, you can see the descriptions down below. We've had quite a bit of funds, cash flow, Cash position is favorable, and we're gonna start doing the projects there in 2025, 2026. The big purple box that you see there is a grant from the state for $750,000 that we have to use by 2026. So we're working on the main ditch piping, which we cannot use a lot of that money there, but we're putting it on the ditch west of Geneva Road, just kind of by the power plant along the Heritage Trail. We're not looking at borrowing money like I'm gonna propose on the next two charts. I am proposing a increase, if you see the small paper with the sewer rates. You can see all the comparison between all the cities, or a lot of the cities that we are comparable with. Goes from Spanish Fork, Provo, Orem, PG, American Fork, Saratoga Springs, and Springville. So on the stormwater, currently we pay $11.01 a month, and I'm proposing a 4% increase. That'll bring that to 44 cents, and then just to keep up with the inflationary cost. Any questions with stormwater? The projects that we are proposing with this 1.495 million in 2026, you can see there 560,000. This is all contingent upon doing road projects that if we go do a full road rebuild, there is some infrastructure that we have to do first. If we do not do those underground first, then the street replacement or rebuild will get delayed because it doesn't make sense to put a new road just to dig it a couple years later. So we are proposing on the streets, I'm gonna just kind of jump into the streets, I'm not gonna dive into it. There's another paper that talks about the street project, but it's Lakeview, 900 East from 200 South to Center Street, Gilman Lane, and then the Gilman Lane drain to Pheasant Brook Park. That goes through Gilman, Lakeview, down to 800 West, up to Pheasant Brook Park. We need to install that storm drain line. Any questions with that storm drain projects?
So reconstruct is just do the surface. Reconstruct with utility is surface and.
Correct. Yeah, that's why that, you already picked at the street map, probably. It's,
That's what you were talking about, sorry, I jumped ahead.
well, yeah, we'll go into that one in a little bit, but when I bring that up, you'll see there is reconstruct and then reconstruct with utilities.
Which one were the streets, Lakeview, those?
Yeah, all those. Okay, if you flip that page over, you'll go into the water utility. No, that's the Orem, the sewer plant. Just right up behind the stormwater one. It's the sewer capital chart. And we are finishing 2025 with those projects. And 2026 money comes to $9 million, of which $7 million is for the Orem treatment plant. And then as part of those road projects that need to be done, we have the Lakeview sewer pipe that needs to be upsized from a 10-inch pipe to a 12-inch pipe. The same thing with the Gilman, those kind of go together. 900 East reconstruction just has a small component of $55,000. And then the $40,000 is just for little capital projects here and there. So that's $9 million. If we go back to or you can just detach this paper. You don't have to go back and forth. You go to the sewer, and on the blue line is our current fee of, we have the base rate, which is $26.54, and then we do charge per 1,000 gallons, a fee of $3.50 for treatment. Our current charge is $47.54. I have it in green because if you look at the average below what the rest of the cities charge, we are below that rate. Once we do our rate increase to be able to pay for some of these improvements of 7% and 10%, where it says a proposed increase, our new fee is going to be $28.40 as a base rate and $3.85 per million gallons, per 1,000 gallons, I'm sorry. That brings our new average bill to $51.50. So that puts us just $1.42 above the average for the rest of the cities. You can see some of those areas that already have done improvements to their plant. Saratoga Springs is part of the TSSD American Fork. They're already above the 53, and Saratoga's 70, 66. Provo is doing their upgrade right now, and it's just one of the, I don't think that's their final rate. They're telling me they're not quite done, so they're already at $56. Spanish Fork is finishing their sewer treatment upgrade at $49.17, and they're not done doing the final hike. And Springville, where I used to work, they haven't done anything, and they don't have nothing planned yet. So they're going to be kind of paying to upsize. So you can see the rates of the people that have not done anything to the ones that are already preparing for or doing a big treatment plant. Any questions about that?
What type of upgrades or improvements or enhancements are happening at those sewer facilities that are costing so much throughout them all?
So it's not adding capacity, it's just renewing the equipment that are 50, 60 years old. The plant was built in the 1950s. So there are some things that, for example, digester covers, some of the
And
process.
Timpanogos is having the same thing?
Timpanogos is doing a complete switch. They're going from aerobic
Aerobic to
digesters
anaerobic.
Stinky to non-stinky?
to anaerobic. So just that,
The other thing is there have been mandates from Department of Water Quality going with the discharge into Utah Lake has to be less phosphorus, less nitrates. So they're raising the standard of what's discharged.
Right.
And that's part of it as well.
Orem was forward thinking, and they actually met or got really close to meeting their phosphorus and nitrogen process back maybe about 10 years ago. So they were ahead of that curve, but now it's part of the renewal. The last piece that we paid for that $1.3 million was for a polishing process, which does remove more of those suspended solids and nitrogen and phosphorus, and they're actually going to use the water at the golf course and make it for reuse. They're not going to do full pressurized irrigation for the whole city, but just the near area where they're trying to reuse some of that water.
Was that a third line they run through there? They have regular sewer lines, they have reclaimed water? How
So
do they support that?
the process that they're doing, the water is pretty clean before it goes into the lake, right? We have to be at a certain turbidity, has to be very, very clean. No phosphorus, of course, no BOD, which is the actual pollutant into the water.
The solids.
Solids and all that, grease. So the process that they did for the polishing was to remove a little more phosphorus to be in compliance. But then, while they were at it, we didn't pay for this part of their upgrade, but it's to be able to be clean enough to put it in an irrigation pipe, but not for the whole city, just the golf course and parts of the industrial park there.
The golf course irrigation, the industrial irrigation.
Yep. Yeah, and they don't have plans to do pressurized irrigation in Orem, and you'll see the water rates for Orem in the next chart. But any other questions for the sewer and the rate increase proposal?
Sewer, our hands are largely tied. I mean, we're contractually obligated to pay a percentage of the treatment plant costs for any upgrades that they have to do, and I'm certain that Orem is they've done some proactive things, but they're not doing anything more than what is required, and they're in the same boat as us, so.
Does that percentage ever change as population or number of households is looked at?
It's all based on the flow that we purchased. So we say that the capacity is a 13 million gallon plant. We purchased 1.625 million gallons capacity. And that's how, and then Vineyard has a little bit, and then Orem has the rest, but it's all pretty much spoken for, unless we start where we can see trying to not buy more capacity to provide the remaining growth that is coming to the city, is to actually cut down on the infiltration and water use. So use less water, limit how much water goes into the pipe that we're sending to the plant. By cutting that, then we pretty much free up capacity for homes.
Have there been any results yet from that consulting firm that came and did a presentation about going and assessing all of the
Yes,
potential leaks or inbound?
So we did the initial study, and then we divided the whole sewer system into 9 basins, 9 main basins. We identified 3, and that's the next phase. Is we're gonna go for another $40,000 study this coming year, and then they're gonna deploy almost 100 sensors, and they start going into each little trunk line, arterials, and then say, okay, during this rain event, your flow is coming here. So then now we focus on that part. But it's been very, very helpful and gives us good direction of where to start, because it's a lot of miles of sewer that if we start saying, I think it's that one, and this one we'll be able to pinpoint. And after this year, and we start handling that infiltration, we'll see that drop on the amount of water we're sending to Orem. So we have a pretty good handle on how much we're selling for water and how much we're sending to the sewer treatment plant. So we're measuring every place, the water we sell that ends up in the sewer, and then we see it through the flow meters that go through to Orem and our sewer treatment pump stations. So we're quantifying, trending, see where the water is coming from.
So with our Anderson Farm discussions, at one point, I thought there was a question of, well, does Orem have any more capacity for us? Have we gotten any answers to that kind of?
We have to go by the capacity. If they say, or says, we don't have more capacity to give you one more, then we have to build another chunk.
I was just curious if any of those discussions have happened. From what I'm hearing you say, is we plan to address future growth by minimizing the groundwater that's seeping in. So my curiosity is if we would need increased capacity before we solve that problem, if it's available, and if it were, would that change these numbers? I feel like it would if we felt we had to push more forward.
So I think we are okay with where we are right now. Right now, with an average flows with no big storms, we're at about 65% of our capacity. Where we run into trouble is when we get some of those big flows, and then we end up paying also on a monthly bill. Say, hey, you exceeded the amount. We've only been at 99% of capacity for 1 month in 2023. But I think for the near future, for the next 10, 15 years, the way we are growing, we should stay, within that 75, 80% of our capacity. But it's very expensive to buy more. I'm trying to make capacity by cutting on the infiltration and the water we send.
Vineyards also using Orem?
Part of it. Orem uses, Vineyard uses maybe about a fourth of the city goes to Orem, and then everything else gets pumped.
So as they continue to grow, I'm just thinking, I wonder how that impacts us as we go forward, not that we have to solve their problems, but what does that do on us?
Yeah. So Vineyard, all the growth that they will see is gonna go to TSSD. So what they have remaining, it's all, what can gravity flow to Orem is already flowing to Orem. Anything new, because it's flowing to the north, trying to put a pump station to send it back south, kind of how we're doing it. So our sewer goes like this, right? And, but yeah, Vineyard is pretty much stuck putting all their capacity with TSSD. And the way TSSD is building their plant is that they will be able to add modules like tracks, right? Orem pretty much got built in a fashion that with their processes that it's not easy to add more capacity, but TSSD is doing it kind of like Salem did it, Payson. They just kind of, they run out, they just build another track.
And with Orem, do we have any sense as to what they're doing to keep their rates so low? If it's based off of how much the
Population.
So they just have, so they're using more then, right?
And then we have more pipe and to spread across, you know, more infrastructure because of our lot sizes.
Speaking of that, is there any piece of them being lower? I look at the 3 cities that are lower. I'm good friends with the mayor of Spanish Fork, and he always tells me that their utilities are lower. Is there anything to that we are overcharging on our utilities because we're saving for capital projects and we will not have to incur debt as much as other cities, where it's, say, Springville, who's much lower than everyone? Is there a philosophy that Springville has taken on of, hey, we're just gonna bond for everything, every capital improvement we need, and we're gonna keep it at a lower rate as possible? Or, I guess, it seems like such, I mean, Springville's being so low. I guess, help me understand that. Are we charging a little more so that we can save for those capital expenses, or no?
So when I got here, we were cash, we had a lot of cash, no projects were being done. So then we started doing those works, and we were able to pay for a lot of those projects because we have the cash. But with the sewer treatment plant, which is a different animal from any of the other capital, Springville has deliberately I ran the sewer treatment plant for 11 years. And every time I was trying to do something, I was trying to buy new property, so I said, let's build a new plant because this one is just putting more lipstick on a pig, and it's just gonna, and it's crumbling. I mean, it's gonna get to the point. I was even trying to buy capacity in Spanish Fork or buy capacity in Provo and build a regional plant, and it was no. And but it's getting to the point where it's just gonna blow up in their face, and they're gonna be in trouble. Kind of like Spanish Fork has had the same treatment, but Spanish Fork says we cannot keep just dumping this money, and they went and bonded. And
I don't know if that answers my question.
Keep in mind too, the comparison to other cities is an FYI.
Sure.
You really can't compare apples to apples because they have different infrastructure. They may have X amount of pipes they've got to replace versus our pipes, or the age of their system is different than ours, the size of their lift stations, the number of lift stations, the generators, the pumps that they have are all different than ours. And so it's really an apples to oranges thing. So keep that in mind. This is just an FYI.
Going to the base question of, are we charging more to save for capital expenditures? I think is my question.
I think that I wouldn't say we are charging more. We are charging what we need to cover those costs.
To cover them 100%?
No.
Not necessarily.
No. So if you look at those charts that he's presented, I mean, for instance.
so this one that says
Right.
Orem.
That black line that's there is our cash flow line. And then you see some of the spikes with the green. Those are capital facility costs. And so we are not in a position in those years where we have a big spike in capital improvement costs that are needed to cover all of that with cash. And so we anticipate we will have to bond in those years.
So my question is, do you think some cities are purposely keeping the rates lower and bonding more in those years?
Well, they would still have to increase when they do finally bond. They're gonna have to have a
Big rate increase.
rate increase.
Right, and we've seen Orem had to do that 2 years ago, maybe.
Even Provo had some of the lowest sewer rates, and they were trying to do that, and then they took a swing at 40% rate increase and then 40% rate
it's
increase.
brutal.
So
Okay, so there is a little bit of philosophy that goes into it from management's standpoint of how much of these capital expenditures do we want to bite off or have cash for? And that's being calculated in by, that's a decision made by Juan, right? Essentially.
Well, I've presented to
group
you, and you're the
discussion,
decision maker.
It's also a matter of timing. I think we see time and time again, entities might avoid making, big changes that are costly, and they're pushing it, kicking the can down the road. And
Not
I
on my
think what
watch type thing.
We're trying to be in a proactive
Sure.
manner.
And we could be even
kind
more
of things.
proactive to the point that we raised them so much that we never had to bond for capital expenditures. There's a decision-making process there, and that's good to know. I guess my final question is there, for these enterprise funds, is there ever a time where you can bond, for example, 2026, and not have the repayment source be the underlying sewer fund?
Why would you do that?
I'm brainstorming. The one thing I hear most about, the one complaint I hear most about is our utility rates. And it's usually a conversation of, I mean, those costs continue to go up. And it's not a hard conversation because, people understand infrastructure, but rates continue to go up and go up. I want to brainstorm. I want to try to help those who are on fixed incomes. I would love to help them any way we can. It's not from and so my question is, we're so blessed with sales tax revenue. Is it even legal to do a bond secured by sales tax revenues for a sewer lift station, and I, again, brainstorming and a dumb question from me who's not in this every day. Is that legal? Can we do that?
Yes, I think you could choose to do that. You would probably have lower interest rates on a revenue bond for utilities, in my experience, than you would for a sales tax bond.
And I wonder if that would impact our credit rating if the creditors see us doing a sales tax bond for a utility.
The council not too long ago just did a general fund transfer a couple of years ago into one of these.
Last year.
500,000.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, we
Right.
could look at the time we're pulling the trigger on a
And we
bond,
have
and
a
that could be a
transfer in
discussion, like,
from
do a general
water
fund
and sewer
transfer.
to
Our
general
rainy day
fund.
fund is really healthy, we want to
Sure.
supplement or subsidize from the general fund and pull less debt, or subsidize the utility rate. That's always an option we could have in front of us.
To
potentially.
Jake's point, if you look at these two charts, if you will find the light blue, the current debt service in the visualized graph, you can see that this proposal intends to bond, and now we start having debt service in that. And that visual kind of helped me ask that same question you are. How much do we start raising rates to minimize that debt, and how much do you do bond? And I don't know if I know the answer to that. We look at softwares and programs and projections and look at that. But we haven't typically had that, and now we're likely, because a lot of those Orem sewer costs, probably gonna have to.
One of the things, Juan and I were chatting as well, I see this all the time on the boards that I sit on. I'm sure Trustee Acerson can attest to this as well. When you have big capital outlays and you're like, okay, we're just gonna put that off. At some point you could say, let's just raise the rate and try to build up a big fund. Well, now you waited 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Now the cost of labor, cost of materials just completely outpaced what would have happened if you just bonded and locked into a low interest rate and serviced that debt. So I don't know if
Yeah,
Juan
but
wants to
maybe you
kinda
go
share
a
that.
year or two and not wait 7 or.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
But I mean, there's timing as part of it as well.
all of those things
and
are a
so-
factor that are tough. We wished we had that crystal ball to always know what future costs would be.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. I mean, the why I ask that is simply because it's year after year with these large increases. And I know why, and I'm happy having those conversations with citizens on a regular basis, and expect them to continue to go up. But to what Mayor Acer, or not, Mayor Lumberg said about, I think that idea of transferring from the general fund came from a meeting like this where we brainstormed ideas. And so just, so staff knows that that's certainly one thing that is on my mind. I love to tout our low property tax rate. Utilities is something that I hear about regularly. Those increases are tough. And again, I understand why. I really do. If we can think outside the box, like we did that one year, like we have in the past, those transfers, I think those are great. Anyways.
The model that I have, that I presented to you in the past few years, it showed for sewer, it was like a 7 to 10% for 4 to 5 years. And then after that, we are compounding those rates. And then after that, we get to a place where we can level out. And that's what this model shows, is leveling out. We're in year 3 of the 5. So after the next couple of years, that's where we end up. This chart right here, that black line, represents those future rate
Leveling
increases as well.
Good discussion.
So we, more than just the transfers from the general fund to the sewer fund, we've also haven't been transferring money from the sewer and the
Enterprise.
water fund to the general fund that we have usually done to help cover.
Admin costs.
Right. And so I just feel like, we need to recognize that, but then also, yeah, it's been nice that we can do it. How long can the general fund do it? And then eventually something's gonna need to catch up in those utility funds, and they're gonna need to be more self-sustaining.
I agree. It is a bit of a Band-Aid to borrow from the general fund. We're unique as a city. We're blessed as a city, and that blessing will continue to grow with some of the commercial growth that we're gonna see. And so I agree which is why it's good that we have this meeting and we say, hey, yeah, this year it makes sense. We can do a transfer. We can not pay admin costs, where I agree at some point you really need it to be self-sustaining.
What might be helpful is if we've got some recommended rates that we're proposing tonight based on these needs that Juan's put together. And he's run these past Jason, our finance consultant with LRB. He and I and Kristen have been on several calls with them, trying to make sure that we're covering everything in the software that we need to and projecting out. There are rate increases projected for the next several years that are similar to these numbers tonight. And again, largely because of this Orem plant issue. But we also have a lot of capital facility needs, and we're an aging and growing city, and so things to keep in mind. But let us plug in some numbers and some of those types of transfers that we've done in prior years and see what that does. I think when we did that exercise last year or 2 years ago, it dropped it by like 50 cents. I mean, to transfer $500,000. And so something that we can do and show you what those results are and see if those are worth it. And we can do that.
If you don't feel appropriate to do this rate increases, we can push projects out. But the one where we're stuck having to bond because we don't have enough monies because of the Orem sewer treatment, that's a $6 million. And then moving to the water, to finish the well and connections, we're looking at about $4.5 million to finish the well house, put the pump, transformer, SCADA, everything, and then making the connections in the road. So between those two, it's a big chunk of change. I'm just adding the other projects that are needed to also redo some of the streets like Lakeview, Gilman, that are really, really bad, 135 West area. So on the water, I'm looking at this year we are finishing with projects of 2.4 million, and for 2020, whatever we don't use on this year, I'm proposing swinging it over to carrying forward to 2026. But in 2026, you see the same thing, to be able to rebuild the roads is Lakeview, Gilman, 135, 900 East, Center Street from Geneva Road to 800 West that are in such shape. On the water rate, I'm I'm proposing a 5% increase to the base rate and 4% to the tier rate. And this is on the lower zone. We have two different zones, three different zones. So I'm calculating it from the lower end of the zones on the $30.55 zone and blocks.
Council, do you need to have a quick explanation on where the zones are in the city? Any questions about that? Those, okay.
So we have different pressure zones because of the elevation of our city. We have to break it down in zones, and we also have our wells kind of in the middle part of town, and then we have to pump it up to 3 times to get to the tank. So each time we have to pump, that incurs more cost, and then that gets passed on to that zone. And then when we go to the upper zone, and then we go to Canberra, that's what the costs are. So on that one, on culinary water, our current rate average is $41.47. The average from the other cities are $31.50. We're quite high on our culinary rates, and that's just because we are subsidizing the secondary water system with our culinary water rates. If you look at the next column where it says irrigation, our lower zone, or the smaller lot, is $15 a month. That should be $10 a month, but I'm going to in the middle of the chart, where the rest of the cities are paying up to, average $36.68 per month to do irrigation. Both of those combined comes to $56.47 at the second to the last column, where it says water and irrigation fees combined. And the average for the rest of the other cities is $68.18. So you can see that we're actually paying less on the combined water service by $12. The very last column is the actual total for all the utilities combined there, the sewer, stormwater, irrigation. Currently, we are paying $115 with the net rate increase of 6%. If I do the total there, comes to $121.38, so $5.36. The average for the other cities with all those utilities combined is $129. So we're below the average. There's a few cities there that are lower. Spanish Fork, like you were saying, Jake, is lower. Orem and Springville.
I'll just throw out software purchases we've approved in the past allows this type of data and information where we don't have to go out of house to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get this. So kudos to Juan in putting this together in such a good format to help us understand it, drive what decisions we may make.
Super helpful.
Can I jump to this, or you?
Yeah, I think if there's no other questions with the utility rates, we'll go to number 30.
So Kristen put together, based on the percent increases then that are recommended from Juan and the software there, with those feature improvements as planned. This is the percentage increase up here, and we had emailed this to you as part of that agenda. What that equates to for properties in kind of central Lindon from Geneva Road up to about Canal Drive, that center portion of Lindon, about a $9.35 increase per month in utility bill. And just as a caveat, we have not received rate increase proposals yet from Republic Services, but given inflation, we would expect that, so. Any other questions on that right now? Okay. Let's see. Debt outlook, you want to go to that?
Before we leave that, on your schedule, the agenda, when we're into the raise rates and the tentative and those bonds, are those a bond in 2025, expected 2030, 2035, those are 4 separate bonds?
Oh, you know
That you
what,
anticipate?
so that was actually dollars from last year, what Juan gave you is been updated, so
Okay.
scratch that
The
on
new
that.
green paper that I gave you with that chart from Orem, those are the new totals. Yeah, this guy right here.
Okay, I was just trying to,
Yeah, so
See how that-
ignore what's on that one that was outdated, I'm sorry.
All right. Then moving on to our debt obligations, have a chart and graph. And we don't have a lot of debt. And we've got sewer. The 2015 sales taxes for the pool. And then the 2023 RDA, and it's for that property purchase on 700 North. And that is RDA and sales tax revenue. So there's general fund in that one, and then the water bond at the bottom. So a lot of it's for utilities or enterprise funds with the property purchase taking up some of the general fund. So, does anyone have any questions about that? We don't,
do we see what the current balance is? We see original principal on that one chart.
I
We've got the
don't,
maturity dates, and that's very
Right.
helpful.
I don't have the current balances for this on that chart, but.
Have you done any analysis? It looks like we have some bonds falling off in the sewer revenue, the two there, in 2031 and 2032. And have you done some calculations, like, at some point, if we do a new bond, those other ones are falling off? And
Yeah, those are all
The net.
included in this finance model where
Okay.
some drop and then we take on.
okay.
And in case anyone asks you, we do not have any general obligation debt, which is secured by property tax.
Go bonds. With what we have coming down the pipe on 700 North with the property we purchased, that debt will stay in place. I would like to express to the council that my goal would be that as the revenue producer that comes in from what potentially would come there, I would hope that we would attack that red debt very aggressively with that new revenue source. If I'm not being too cryptic. I think that, you know, I think we took a gamble. We rolled the dice and we hit straight sixes. And as long as it goes through, it'll create a revenue source that could pay that off in 2-3 years if it works out the way we want it to. So
No.
It was.
that was the same question I had. Is that collateral? Because then we'd have to, but it's not, right? It's a sales tax.
Yeah, but we will want to do that, exactly what you said, because at, I forget, is it 10 years, the final payment was a balloon payment that is a monster dollar
Yeah.
amount, so we'll wanna pay it off ASAP.
And we're already paying as if it's amortized and, for 10 years. So I'm paying extra.
That's right,
Every year.
thank you.
That's killer.
Yeah,
That's
that's
awesome.
great.
It looks good. Looks healthy. I mean, I think we hear that every year from our auditors, is that we're in a really healthy debt position.
Just as a reminder, you guys may see every time, almost every time we do a budget amendment, Kristen will include, I gotta find it now. Kristen will include this chart. This is not in that thing we emailed to you, but was in our budget amendment just from a few weeks ago. And for those that are newer, at the bottom, there's this yellow line. So these are our projected ending fund balances for the end of the fiscal year. And then just below that, our projected ending fund balance in our general fund. There's usually a number there. And so those will be key numbers to keep an eye on. On the right-hand side are more of our enterprise funds, water, sewer, storm. And so those are the fund balances. When Juan's talking about, hey, we need whatever, $1 million for this project, and we only have 1.2 million in our fund balance, that makes us nervous. We don't want to get so low in those utility enterprise funds that we have a catastrophe, an emergency, and we don't have any cash that we can actually do, fix or repair those things. And so,
That's what this chart has here on these lines. We have the solid black line, which is our cash flow, and then you see two dotted lines. That's our reserves. That's where we always want to keep that rainy day fund, and we're keeping that black line above that dotted line.
I want to mention the general fund.
So while we're talking about fund balances, we've been trying to keep a good, healthy fund balance without going over. In the last 2 years, we did go over. And by over, I mean the 35% threshold that the state sets, that we're not supposed to have more than 35% of our budgeted revenue in our fund balance for the general fund alone. That's the only one that has that stipulation. And so we did get written up for having too much for 23 fiscal year and 24 fiscal year. Some of the other finance professionals from other cities say that they just put in a big budget for transfer to a capital facilities fund. Yep. And so, and have it budgeted as a big amount. And then once things close up and you find out, oh, we had this project budgeted that didn't get completed, so we didn't spend all that money, so we have extra money, or we had extra sales tax come in more than what we thought would come in, and so we've got extra money. So then we can do a transfer of whatever's needed. We don't have to do the whole budgeted amount. Transfer that into a CIP fund, and then it can be transferred back into the general fund without an issue.
So we will likely be proposing that this late spring, when we do kind of our final budget amendments. We'll be taking a big chunk of money out of the general fund, putting it likely into our capital facilities, for capital project for facilities. And we don't want to necessarily do roads because we want money there to use for roads.
Right,
So,
when we transfer into roads, we want to keep it in roads, right?
but if we put it into our facilities budget, then we have plenty of projects that we could justify why that money's there. And that could be property purchases or facilities or whatever there.
Yep.
But then maybe October, then we usually do another budget amendment, and we might pull some of that money back into the general fund. Moving forward, we might have to play that game to avoid getting this ding on our audit.
Is there a limit, how many times you can take your money back and?
Nope. There would be a limit if we were doing that with an enterprise fund, and it wouldn't be a limit of number of times. It would be like going through legislative and stuff to say, okay, we're transferring money to an enterprise fund or back from an enterprise fund to the general fund. There's a lot of red tape with that. So that's why we're using a capital improvement fund. It's also a governmental fund, so it can go in and out easy.
This is a really good problem to have. So,
I'm sorry, a lot of wheels are spinning, so we're just, okay.
So, yeah, so these percentages that are at the bottom of this, we can't exceed 35% in the last several fiscal years. Like Kristen said, we've been really close. We're projecting the end of this fiscal year being close to 34%, and that makes us nervous. And so as we get closer, we're gonna take a big chunk of that money and move it into the capital facilities fund.
Are there any general ideas on, so what I hear is we had a little bit too much in our general. Are there any reasons why we miscalculated that? Was it because sales tax came in higher than we thought? Just some expenses that didn't get done?
That's usually what it is. In the fiscal year 24, a big chunk of it was the 1.3 million that we transferred from general fund to sewer fund. As the auditor was reviewing that, he could not find anything that could that supported us doing that transfer open-ended as a possible loan with no interest. And so, so they had to reclassify it and say that it was like a due to, due from kind of a thing and not a transfer. And so that didn't come out of our fund balance. And so that stayed in our fund balance and we had too much. So.
That makes sense, because I thought I'd misunderstood. I was like, I thought we'd moved it, but they counted it anyway, so thanks. That makes sense why they counted it.
So since that issue came up, we'll have to address that with the auditor if we're looking at these other subsidies too for utility funds and see what they say. We may have to pass a resolution with it or something that says we're giving this money and here's the obligations to potentially pay it back if we needed to or something like that. So.
And I don't know if this was the case, but like Canal Road, where we bid it and it was way too high and then we push it back, we bid it again, and then it's much lower. One of those things can kill a budget percent real easily because 6 to 8 months maybe, well, by starting it later, prices came down, it worked really well, but you set aside all that money and so those types of things can happen.
In that case, next time we say, oh, we're saving a whole lot of money, we need to put that into a CIP. And then if it costs more for the road, then we pull it out of the CIP.
Yep, we can pull it out easy. Yep. A lot of times, like with the end of the year, that's right in prime construction time, so June 30. And so things are going, but they're not going fast enough maybe, so we're not spending, $1 million that we thought was gonna be spent by June 30. I asked Juan to predict in his crystal ball, and
Just trying to build it.
Any other questions on those items?
It's over there. Thanks for the information. It's great to hear. Great to understand more.
Hey, and Kristen's office is open all the time too, so if you guys have questions on finances and you want to dive deep, set up an appointment, come meet with her, and Chase is also very helpful, our assistant finance director, so let us know if we can explain things. Okay, a few of these items we're gonna go quick through. Just as an FYI, past savings, we had a few positions, we've had some higher than desired turnover in our water department, but we think we've got a couple new guys that will stick around with us. So we had some vacancies for a little while that ended up being some savings there. Increased in new revenues that we're looking at. Just as an FYI, we were sold some of our surplus vehicles, and over the last fiscal year, that was almost 400,000. That does not include the police department trucks. So a lot of that revenue offset the replacement vehicle purchases that we are facing. Grants this last year, since this meeting last year, we've had 191,000 in new grants, so that's awesome. And that was multiple different grants that our staff has worked on, so. So we are on the back page there, second page, and a few months ago, we were talking about the community center and rental rates. It was kind of involved with the Holy Cow discussion, and one of the questions came up, and a great point. We had not zeroed in on our actual operating costs for that community center. And so asked Chase if he would put together some data on that, and I'll let him give you a rundown on the community center. And then we have several other things we want to talk about that building on, so.
Sure. I won't take too terribly long. I looked at like a kind of a 5-year actual expenses in, I think there was like 3 different funds that Adam identified and wanted us to look at. The expenses for those in the most recent fiscal year 2024 that we have complete data for was $833,042.03. Revenues were revenues only directly related to the community center. I don't have the list with me, but I can get it to you if you want it, of those revenues, but.
So it's not just the rentals at the building, but it's also the rec programs that are run out of that facility. So we're even including like soccer and baseball because that's where our staff and everybody's originating, but we are not including aquatics.
Not including the aquatic center. And so the revenues for that were 253, and sorry, fiscal year 2024, 253, 883, 27. And so it's a, yeah, so,
Huge subsidy.
yeah, a bit of a subsidy there,
Do we
so.
have this information, Chase? Am I looking in the wrong spot? Is that something you
I
have?
have absolutely no idea. I sent it
No.
to Adam to take a look at it.
Sorry,
and
I have not
do
sent this
know.
out to you, so.
Sorry.
We're all.
Yeah.
Agenda.
You can put up there.
Do you want me to share that spreadsheet, or is
Sure.
that, do you have, if you have information that you want to share on it, Chase, sorry.
Not, I
Not
took
particularly.
these
It's like
numbers just straight from that.
$600,000.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Between those two.
Wow, I can't read that.
Yeah, good luck.
I'm happy to email you guys the spreadsheet if you love looking at spreadsheets and such. I know there's kind of a rare breed that likes that like me, but if you're one of those, happy to share them.
For those of us that aren't that rare breed, we
Yeah.
fake it.
Pretend you,
Bring
okay,
it on.
yeah.
The cost primarily wages.
Yeah,
The
big,
conclusions.
a giant chunk of that is wages, yes. I didn't,
Based in that building, or how do you determine?
it was wages from the, what is the 55 fund? The community center, yeah,
It's like the Parks and Rec staff.
yes,
Gotcha.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, if there's nothing that you need to show.
There's nothing really
Yeah,
on
that's all
there.
right.
I'm happy to send it to you. But yeah, that was basically all I had planned on saying. Sure. Yeah, sure. And this is just for the fiscal year 2024 is all I was kind of reading off. Have it from 2020 to 2024 if you're dying to know all those numbers. But expenses was $833 and $42.03. So basically $833,000. Revenues was $253, $883, 27. So like basically $254,000.
For me, I kind of like, how much does it cost an hour to run that facility? Okay, that's as geek sheety as I get, probably.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the cost to run it in 2024, what we actually paid was about $830,000.
And what's that per hour?
24 hour or per open hour?
As in relating to if I was going to rent that facility, what I should be charging to recoup that. So that's
More than anybody's gonna pay, I mean,
That's,
in the reality of it.
That's with, the heater runs 24 hours a day. We don't have rentals in there 24 hours a day, so we'd have to consider those utilities as running 24 hours, but for expenses, but.
So remind us, Heath, it's open 9 to 6?
Well, then, programs go till 10, we should say.
Okay, so say it's open 12 hours a day. You wanna calculate that while we're,
Sure.
give us a ballpark estimate, and then we'll go on to these next items and come back to you? Just give us an effort on that one, so.
Sure. And the question was specifically was
$95 an hour based on 24 hours a day.
how much we would need for the rental for the community center, right? Is what you're looking for? Okay. Yeah. Can I run to my office and
Sure.
open up the spreadsheet and I'll go see.
Any
what
other
kind of- as a
any other
percentage it
questions
is.
for Chase
Yeah.
on that item specifically?
For me, that's just helpful when we're proposing a deal for somebody or
Sure.
what we should be doing. That's just helpful to know how much we're subsidizing.
And that's based off of an assumption, essentially, that the community center would fund the Parks and Rec department.
Right.
So that would be the biggest gap,
mean, the
and there
Parks
might
and
be a
Rec-
couple steps.
Before we owned that building, Parks and Rec was here. So I don't know if you want to say, and we don't run a
Actually,
library.
Public Works, yeah, but.
But it may, so this is probably the widest that it would be.
Recreational programs, right, soccer and baseball.
Programmed in
Those
these,
were in there.
right.
Yeah.
Idea of what like the percentage of that the total expenditures was specific to the community center rentals, I guess, and then have an idea from there of what it might
And
be from there.
you're trying to get an idea, what is the value that
Yeah.
someone's getting? If someone because we provide this facility and all that comes with it, what's the value that someone's getting in
Yes.
exchange? Okay, not that you're gonna try to charge.
You can say,
It should,
you're
we should charge
you're
this
getting a
much.
good deal for this, and you're feeling good about what you're doing and feel like you're actually giving them value as well. Just so you have that in just a piece of information.
Sure. I'll see if I can get that pretty quick.
If you need more time, this is something we can get back to
Yeah, for
another day too, Chase, so.
Okay,
It's something I don't want extensive research,
I'll give it a college try, yeah, sure.
hours and hours.
Thank you. Yeah, bottom line, heavily subsidized, if that's okay to say, so. Community center, we did want to have a few more discussions here, just kind of the long-term outlook on the facility. Really questions for you as the elected officials. Do we and how much do we want to continue to invest in the building? The parking lot was an issue. We've got some really significant cracks and failures in both the north and south side of the building and the parking lot. We brought that forward with a bid last year, and the council decided not to make those improvements. We've gotten some better bids, actually, of late. Alex, we threw in there 200 to 220 is what we thought recently, and he's found a group that thinks they may be able to do it for around 150, and so that number's getting better.
Got a complete remove and replace?
I don't know the details on that, and so that was just something he mentioned to me and very briefly just the other day.
'Cause I
so.
still have a hard time with this one, because I park there and do different things, and I'm not getting there yet.
Yeah, and so that's part of this discussion, is how much do we put into this facility? The north end of the building began construction 1949, I think was the date. Does that sound right, Heath? And then as you go down the hallway, the south lobby and gym was done in the late 50s?
Yeah, I think it's the late 50s.
And so the mayor brought up recently in a conversation, asked about a seismic study, and the church had actually done a seismic study before they sold it to us, and that was part of their reason to get rid of the facility. It says here's what's wrong with it, but it doesn't have any costs associated with it to make those improvements to make it safe. And so that would be a question. Is it something that you want to investigate, a seismic study that then gave recommendations and potential cost estimates?
And the thought behind that I was bringing that up with staff was, we acquired this building, we got it through an endowment. That was a big part of how we acquired it. And if we had a seismic study and we knew what it takes to completely make it, seismically sound, then we could determine, is this a tear down, rebuild versus shore up what we've got? Then can we set a strategy or game plan of so many years we're gonna build up an account or a fund versus pulling a bond or a debt? We also will have probably very likely in front of us in the next conceivable 2 to 3 years, potential property across the street that we might be looking at based on what a new school board decides to do with that building there. So I think it would be timely for us to now, I feel that having this community center is kind of the heart of we're not gonna, I tell people in the community, there's no plans to build, a gymnasium, like what they have in PG, a rec center, or a big full-blown library. You look at what the library and the rec center get subsidized in our neighboring cities, and it's in the millions. But our community center, I think, has a really high value in so many intangible ways. It's not just a financial value. And so we've always talked about what this campus might become. We have those 2 older homes on the corner that we own as well. And so, Heath has always floated some pretty cool, big ideas. At some point, maybe we just need to start planning, making a financial strategy for the future. So that's.
As far as the seismic study goes, are there any buildings that were started in 1949 that check out to be seismically safe? Do we really need a seismic study, or can we just
We
apply?
much
know
would it
that
cost?
it's not safe.
Right.
To
Well, I mean, we know that.
Cost to
Right.
upgrade it.
I just haven't seen any that, you know, the church did the Salt Lake Temple at billions, I don't know, right? Usually it's tear it down and start over.
From what I understand, there are engineering, structural things that can be done. It's just costly, but we don't know how much it would cost.
My question is, do we want to do that on such an old building?
Right.
There's no doubt the programs within it are incredible. The people that run them, you know, I'm over the seniors and everything. Everything that happens in there is all about the people. The building itself is a disaster, and it's not something that is easy to use and it's or functional or anything else. So for me, regardless of where that is seismically, I don't think it's worth trying to figure that out, and that some kind of study or plan to, you know, save for something else is really where we need to be.
If we find out, it might be bad for us.
So that leads to then this next point, and the same thing the mayor just brought up, is the Lindon Elementary property something we want to look at? To build a new community center on our current footprint, I guess that's another question we could explore. Or do you feel like we need a new community center?
And on the, what could happen with the elementary school, I think we need to seriously start looking at that.
I think we need to be gathering data and information and cost, and then potentially be setting aside a fund of some kind to be ready to ramp up to that.
If
because
we
it's gonna
had
be a
that
lot.
whole space, I mean, that would be an incredible opportunity.
Add to our portfolio of seismic buildings.
Well, it's a building that's going away, whether it's 1 year, 5 years, I don't see it going 10
I mean,
either way.
I'm completely, this is not my wheelhouse, but I did have one contractor say that the cost in his opinion, sometimes, depending on how you look at it, what you're dealing with, the cost per square foot on totally brand-new build could be more than a seismic upgrade. So that might be good information to have, potentially. And, or maybe you just say, hey, the layout of the building, we just want to refashion something different altogether and how it's used. Anyway.
Either way, we're putting, I think the crux of this is, we want to start creating a capital improvements project fund where we can put some money aside for
That's
whatever
what I
we
would like to
decide.
propose, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess there's two different questions I have. So, sounds like there's definite value in a community center, whether it's this building or something else. Is the intent of the council that, yes, we want a community center in 20 or 30 or 50 years?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so then we can explore some options on whether that's the current building. Talking to our building official, kind of to the mayor's comment, his estimate was seismic upgrades, you're paying usually about 60% of the cost of a new facility, but you're not gaining any new facilities.
Right.
So you're,
For me, I don't see that as desirable to me at all.
Yeah,
Well,
me
that's
either.
where, you know, since I've been on the council for so many, you know, a decade with you guys even longer, every year we have, you know, things that we invest in the building. It's the same conversation every time. Is it worth it? What's happening? Here we have the, you know, the asphalt. We kind of pushed that off last year. Again, the asphalt, you know, we always have something that, and so Heath is nodding, yes. So
I'm
Heath,
just hoping that someone besides me doesn't walk across that parking lot, fall in a crack and break an arm or something. I mean, that happens, but every time we snowplow in those cracks, pieces of asphalt are chipping on. So
yeah.
are we Band-Aiding it or are we gonna do
Right.
something about it?
I think it's time to stop just, you know, putting lipstick on a pig potentially versus just get a hold. Anyway,
But again, on the asphalt thing,
yeah,
what is it to cut out a few of those strips and replace that versus the whole thing? 200 grand for an apartment or a parking lot that may go away 10
If
years
if we
anyway, I
have
have a real
seismic
hard time
work or
with,
new build that, yeah, just destroys it,
It's
yeah,
just-
it's tough.
not money wise to be spent.
Is there kind of back to the planning aspect, is there interest in, sounds like there's interest in the Lindon Elementary property. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
I worry about how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah,
Yes,
the question was,
but interest-
are we interested?
interest, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't know that there's a lot of value in the building, and what we've seen with Orem where they bought, Hillcrest, thank you. And we went and met with them, Heath and I, 6 months, 8 months ago, and picked their brain pretty good on what they experienced. The building ended up being pretty much a throwaway, other than the newer gym component, which they converted into a little tiny rec center.
And that had to be torn down right to the brick and to the joists.
Yeah, and
Because they did an amazing, Sean works.
Oh, yeah,
there.
I've
We've
been there,
there.
been through it.
It's really an amazing building, and they used ARPA funds to do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was a complete tear down to rebuild it to safe and usable space.
So Jake, Mike,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the question there, should we start saving for potential? I think the answer is yes. That doesn't mean we're buying anything, that doesn't mean we're doing any seismic updates, doing a parking lot.
We need to start building
But
a
we
capital
start building
fund.
up a fund for whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Did Orem know before they bought, Hillside? What was it?
Hillcrest.
Did they know before they bought Hillcrest that the building was not gonna end up being of any value? Did they do study before they even made that purchase? Or did they buy
You
it
have
and
a
then
short
discover?
window of time to be,
Yeah, I think
have the
it's
first option to
60 or
obtain it,
90
yeah.
days
90 days.
on a first right of refusal with the school district.
Is that why the school
I know
district was
that-
selling it, was because it was seismically unsound?
I don't know.
I know that they don't have any regrets. I was down there last week, and of course, they do use a lot of federal dollars, but that pocket right there is unique too, between the mall and those 5,000, 10,000 people that live captured in that. But they were telling us that they have no regrets, and it's busy every night. They have a concession stand in there that'll cook you dinner, and the kids come. All their youth programs are in there.
They
and-
have a
and
lot
they-
of, yeah,
They wanna buy the
underserved,
other schools too,
Yeah.
and do the same thing.
It's a nice facility and it's well used.
and the park is amazing, what they did with it too.
Should we be looking for consultant help to put together a plan for the future community center?
Without owning the property first?
Yeah?
Well, our current community center
Yeah, or current.
Well, if the window
And-
is so tight, if it ever comes up and we only have some time, we ought to already have an idea or a plan on how we might use it and what it might look like.
So right
So
now,
you-
Alpine is planning to close it, right?
Well, no, they deferred it to the new,
Oh,
Yeah.
The
okay.
new board,
but as soon as that new
board
district is in play, or the board, that will be a discussion
decision
right
they
away.
have to make.
They have to make that decision
How
because it
soon will
was,
they be in play?
oh, yeah, November of this,
Number next fall. And then that
This
district will
November.
operate fall of 2027 will be when the new.
they'll have a
our
year and a
reorganized
half
If they
basically.
decide to close it, it's still like a year and a half-ish or something in public notification and
Right.
everything else, right? So we know,
Well,
Depend, so
That's-
they have to give notice, they would have to close it in 27 is what you're asking, the fall of 27?
no, I'm saying, how long is the earliest that it could close? If Alpine School District is taking it off, we don't get this new district until 2025, November, then if they were to put it on the shortest straw possible,
the
we're
current
looking at
district
3.5
had that
to
in
2 years.
play, made a decision early in a year, and we're gonna close it before the end of that year. Like, it was like 3, 4, 5 months.
Yeah.
That if they go through that process, they can do it. So if this board is in play
deadline
next
right
November,
now, the
they
state
could,
sta-
as a board, make that decision
State
before
statute
they're.
is you have to open the study for closure. There's different periods of time. You have to have public noticing and input. So I think this, if I remember, it was like fall, it has to be by November of 1 year.
Mhm.
And then you have your open houses and your public comment, and then you vote. And then, yeah, it could be from a fall to a fall.
It
within a
really
year.
does play out fairly quickly.
Do
But,
you know what Orem paid for that elementary school?
oh,
The
My son
Hillcrest?
knows.
He was, I was down there last week. He was pretty tight-lipped on everything because it was
Well, Orem didn't
He said the
pay for it.
city-
They got other funds.
Yeah, he said the city's investment there was $1 million. But that, I don't know if that was
That's-
the rebuild.
Say $1 million for that.
Yeah.
I get the impression that was for the building.
So how are they
They
hiding?
they were into at least close to 4 million on the
Yeah.
property purchase.
On the
So,
property.
but they used ARPA funds from the COVID money days to offset.
So we need
a lot
another
of their
COVID
costs.
outbreak, is that what you're
And,
saying?
yeah, but they also used it, they have a well there on the site, so they've used some water funds there. They had a mix of different funding.
Council, it sounds like we're all supportive of this idea, so maybe that's another thing to look at for staff, for our county and staff to now look at creating a separate capital account.
I maybe
For-
not with Steve yet to start having a consultant, start figuring out what to do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we start setting aside money for what we may.
Start setting aside money right away in this
Right away
budget.
either. I'm just saying at some
we
point,
will do
yeah.
it, for sure.
Soon.
I mean, we've talked about it already
Yes.
tonight. We're gonna shove money somewhere in our budget, so this could be
Right.
one of those items, and so.
Could be one of the ways we avoid the going over the rainy day.
Oh, that's,
And it's not a problem. I mean, we can push money in there, and if things change, we can adjust according to changing things.
We know we have to do something about our community center regardless, so.
So, I'm backing up a little bit. What I wanna make sure that we have clear direction is the intent, we're gonna let the community center as is fall apart.
We're gonna put Band-Aids
mean,
on it.
If the roof is leaking, are we okay with that? If the boiler goes out, are we, I mean, do
From a
we?
legal perspective, we clearly can't allow it to get to the point that it's creating an unreasonable risk, of safety, and it goes, because then not only are we exposed to liability, but if we know about that and choose to ignore it, then
Right.
we face potentially some higher damages, so,
I guess what we're not clear on though is if we're just gonna rebuild on our current site
right.
or explore a possibility down the road. And we don't know if that secondary site is going to be a possibility for sure. But with our current site, we would need to get a plan. I think we do need a consultant or some advice just to create, get cost estimates, what type of offerings we would want to have in a new facility if we're not going to shore up the existing. So really quickly, council, do you want to see numbers on refurbishing the existing building at all? Do you want to explore getting estimates on that?
no.
Okay, so we're looking at new build,
And if the roof leaks, we're gonna fix it.
just patch, put the lipstick on the pig.
And I say that tongue in cheek, but literally Springville, when they were planning to build their new city hall, I don't know if anybody ever went there a year or two before. I was in a city council meeting and it was dripping. I mean, they had buckets catching water dripping from a roof leak. And so, but they had made a decision where they were saying, we're not investing any more money into this. I'm sure if it was a safety hazard, they would have done something, but, and I hate to say that's what we're gonna end up with, but likely we could have some really significant operations there that may not be functional if we don't put a lot of money into the building, and so,
I mean,
it-
is
it would
there
be helpful.
anything imminent right now? We have been putting money in lots of things
We're
there.
investing $20,000 to $40,000 a year probably in
Yeah.
that structure.
So for structurally, on this budget, if you saw that that chart at the end, the roof is on there. Is it leaking? No. As the asphalt lost a lot of its gravel? Yes. That can be maybe kicked down the road or patched as it can, but that's the whole shingle side. The other side, we put a roof on a few years ago, the flat membrane side, but those are the little things that, and the boiler, there needs to be something done with the boiler. We won't have heat next year. Steam valves are gone wonky, but we can keep putting $20,000-$30,000 into it and still keep it safe, I think.
We'll come back to this and bring this forward for another discussion. This was helpful. I think it would be good for us to have a target date of, you know what, we're gonna make this building last another 5 years or 10 years.
It's just
And
so
we're gonna
tied
come up
to
with a
that
plan.
other property, it's hard to make a decision until we
Yeah.
know we have certainty there. If you told me that we didn't have a chance at that Lindon property, I'd be pretty close to saying, okay, it's time to look at a field house / community center, let's get the costs, let's look at it. I think I would be ready, but it is, with the Lindon Elementary there, I think that there's still some question marks, and so I'd say, yeah, let's try to do what we've kind of done for the last 5 years or so, and keep it functional, keep it safe, keep us out of liability, and knowing that, yeah, within the next couple of years, we're gonna have a real clear vision of what to do with that building.
And then if that doesn't become available, we turn our attention just to the building itself. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
But we can certainly put money aside in the CIP.
Yeah, we'll start doing that.
Start that
That
right
day's
away.
definitely coming.
Yeah, just as another item as far as the Lindon Elementary site, so this air photo, we were looking at this the other day. We think this is actually probably a Saturday that this pool is open. So you look at all the cars that are parked here, and they're down in the community center. The parking that occurs at Lindon Elementary's property for our pool is a reality, and so.
That's where we always park.
Yeah, something to keep in mind, another basis for potentially picking up that properties during the summer months. We certainly overflow onto theirs, and vice versa. They're doing it when they have, whatever, carnivals and parents' night and things. They're overflowing into our
We're good
parking lot,
neighbors,
so
both sides.
We are. And so.
If we
but-
wait longer, then I can start offering, $10 parking in my driveway. Mile.
Okay, thank you for that direction, and we'll bring that forward and talk more about that here in the future, so.
I just have a quick question. With the barbecue place, they have that little patch of field in the back. Would we ever want to approach them about?
We did years ago.
It's been a while since
Yeah,
we
it's-
asked them.
I don't know if it's even the same owner. Originally, we were hoping to acquire the restaurant and that piece.
Right, when we were doing the
when we
public
bought
safety
this.
building.
And when we did the public safety building, yeah, and so that was probably 2016 that we
I'm
approached them.
just thinking if the school's not an option, but we want to have a little bit bigger footprint, that could be
Yeah,
something
we
to
can
look
try that
into.
again, see if there's interest there. Okay. Moving on, we're at the personnel issues. We've just, as we're looking here, I don't think we have anything as of right now that we're looking at as new positions for this coming fiscal year, other than the police department, as mentioned, as we develop 700 North and we get more commercial businesses out there, particularly retail sales, that those have a higher demand on police, that we may need a new officer at some point, but probably not something this current fiscal year, so. Chase, can you review that operational revenues versus personnel costs memo with us real quick?
Sure, yeah. I think this one was in the email,
Yeah.
but I don't have a whole ton to say about it. If you guys have specific questions, happy to address those, but I was just kind of essentially going to point to the graphs on there. Our personnel costs have kind of grown as a percentage of our operational revenue over the last 5 years. And our revenues have also grown a bit from 2020, but I think that they're down from 2022. We're down quite a bit, so that accounts for some amount of the percentage of personnel costs as a factor of operational revenue. But yeah, that's
Personnel cost, is that a total cost of compensation? Is that insurance? Is that everything, or is that just wages?
that's wages, salaries, and benefits for all employees, and it includes all of the positions that have been added since 2020. So yeah, that's everything, all personnel costs.
That's part-time, full-time, everything.
All right, any other questions?
Just an FYI, we're keeping an eye on this and want to make sure you're comfortable with this in general, so. Okay, if no questions on that, thank you, Chase. Yeah. What I've just passed around here, this is our draft, and I would like to collect this after we discuss this. We haven't presented this to our employees, and just wanted to get you to have eyes on it here tonight. And so, we've looked at, would be a market rate adjustment similar to what we've done in other years. We did one in 2023. We did not propose one in '24. Every couple of years, we actually participate in some software that most local governments throughout the state can go in and enter in their current salary data. So they enter in for each position. There's definitions on specific positions and what this position may do and perform, and you match that definition with the closest positions in your city. Then it gives us all of the salary data for all these multiple entities. And so we compare this to see where we're at with the market, to make sure our positions are competitive. Our goal is to be plus or minus, we used to say 3% below midpoint in the pay range was acceptable. This year, we're trying to be a little more conservative. We'd bump that to a negative 5%, so you're 5% below the market midpoint. Anything beyond that, less than that, in that kind of orange area, if you look at that bell chart, is where we're gonna start losing employees, which is what we've seen. And they'll see job announcements that are significantly thousands more per year, and move for those. And so, we also, on the converse, we're not trying to lead the market, so we're not gonna be on the far right side of that graph, with our midpoint. And if we end up, as we make adjustments, as we have positions that maybe they're higher, we just won't amend those over several years until they kind of come back to the market point. So what's been proposed there on the bottom right is that chart that has the blue and orange and white. That's our current pay range chart. We have a range for each position that's been identified, and it's adopted as part of our budget every year in our budget documents. And positions are assigned that certain range. Step 5 out of 12 is actually our midpoint is step 5. Multiple years ago, the intent was to move that midpoint in the pay range a little sooner, and we were seeing people that were training a few years and then moving on, and so we want to get them to the midpoint faster to try to retain them. So then on the chart up above, that first blue column on the left is the percentage that they are below the midpoint in the current pay range. And then to the right, that blue column would be our recommendations where we would be moving them to another pay range and the next step closest without paying them less. And then shows the percentage compared to the market midpoint average after the move. And then the total cost when you factor in benefits, it's called bennies on their benefits, and pay compensation is on the far right. So with these adjustments on these proposed positions, the total fiscal impact for that next fiscal year would be about the $22,670. Pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, where we have $10 million amounts on wages and benefits for all of our employees. And so
Where's the 22,000 number, sorry?
far right on the top. This is a study that I explained in 3 minutes and takes several months to complete. And so Chase has done a lot of this legwork, and then he and I and others go through this multiple times and make sure that we're comparing entities, other cities that, and positions and job titles that we feel are reflective of our positions here at the city. And any questions on this?
So help me, I'm looking at the first line, so this is Heather. Right now, her hourly is $27.68, and that's 15.61% below market. And if it changes to $27.82, then she's 1.66 above?
Yeah, so this shift is, what we're really looking at, the primary issue is their pay range, and so it's not necessarily their hourly rate.
the midpoint of their pay range. So it's changing her pay range to a higher range, but in,
She can
in
top out
practice,
higher.
we're actually gonna move her back steps, so she'll get increases on that range. So that's why it's like, you're not taking somebody, moving them up 3 ranges, and then that's gonna cost the city a lot of money. We're moving them up, but back.
So on her specific example, if you start over on the left, her current range is 11, step 12. And so, I know it's really small and hard to see, but so then if you were to go down to that pay range chart, so she's on the far right at 2768. So the proposal is that then her her position moved to actually range 14, step 6. So she has potential, like Kristen said, to earn more in the long run. It's giving her more opportunity, but that range where she could top out at would be comparable to other entities. But what we're comparing is the midpoint, that range 5. And so, but what we've seen traditionally is what it tops out at is very similar to other entities. Does that help, Lincoln?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. I'm wondering when this kind of information gets delivered, does the employee have the overall sense of, oh, this is awesome, I love this, thank you for helping me, or, oh, okay.
I
Hey,
think,
we want them to feel
this
good
is,
and
this has
excited
very
about
much been a positive thing.
Okay.
And, I mean, for Heather's specific case, she's topped out in her pay range, and so this provides her years of more opportunity to earn more.
Visibility for potential growth.
Right, and I mean, she's one specifically, not to target her, but I mean, she's looked at other positions
Right.
outside of Lindon, and so we've,
The data on the sheet is valuable, but the delivery method also can be pretty important and significant.
yeah. So this is something for employees that have been here a while, they've seen this in the past, but again, it's not every single year. But what we're seeing, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, rates are increasing so significantly, we're having to make 25, 30 adjustments every year or two. So, adjustments in specific position pay, so.
So just point of clarification from when we looked at this before, Adam, before this meeting. This is calculating is this calculating, yes or no, the assumption of the COLA merit proposal?
This does not include the COLA, this is current pay, current.
Okay,
So, and because what we're comparing to in other cities is data they've already entered. And so it's not factoring in any COLAs that they might give this July either.
okay.
And so the intent is that if this was approved, then the COLA shifts that pay scale after it's approved. Does that answer your question? Okay. So speaking of the COLA, we included in that packet we emailed out, just historical COLA comparisons on several other national indexes that we've looked at in the past, some of that are more localized, the West, the mountain areas, Social Security, Utah retirement systems, we've included those. Met with the mayor, Kristen and I, and discussed this prior to this meeting, and would recommend a cost of living adjustment of 2.5%, given our 12-month historical look over this last year on interest. So that's below the national US CPI, but something that we feel is still generous when factoring all these things, so.
Do we continue to see our neighboring cities do a COLA? Is that a pretty standard?
We do, and part of that issue with these wage adjustments, we're seeing those continuing to happen is because they're also looking at those market adjustments, and other entities, you might ask other council members and other agencies, a lot of cities call it different things, and so they'll say we're doing a market adjustment. And they don't call it a COLA, but that's what it is. And so they're increasing things, or they'll factor in a merit and a COLA as one lump percentage. We've historically broken them out as two different things. But yes, we are traditionally seeing most of our neighboring entities factor that into their compensation equation in some way. Questions on that?
Any idea on a merit, or is that forthcoming?
So the merit would be based off of this pay range chart. And so, yes, we're working that into the budget, and we anticipate that the merit would be applied in the midpoint in the fiscal year in January is what we've done historically.
Do you have a percent that's associated with that number, do you think?
So on steps 5 through 12, it's a 2.6% change between each of those pay steps. And so if they perform adequately enough to get the merit in January, we would have that 2.5% COLA in July that would take effect, and then a 2.6% increase in January if they obtained that merit increase. So 5.1% increase over those two changes.
Do you know how the state's doing it with their advertised 3% increase? What that includes or what it doesn't include?
I would have to look at what was published on that. Yeah. I don't know that.
Just
off
as
the top
another
of my
piece of
head.
information that might be helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
So 5.1 roughly combined COLA merit on the year. Okay.
Okay.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the graph provided by Chase is concerning. I mean, you look at the increase we've had from 2020 to 24 compared to our revenue. You know, we worked pretty hard to increase revenues as a council. You know, we increased them by 4 million. That was almost completely gobbled up by personnel costs. We always need to keep an eye on this, and so it's just so tough because I understand the reason for a COLA. I certainly don't see it in any businesses that I deal with, and I know that public and private are different, but I don't know. It's tough. I also have tough with just increasing positions just to increase the positions. We're not counting merit. We give 99% of our merit increases. I know we're all a big happy family, but I imagine we have top performers, and I imagine that we have, typically in businesses, there's 20-30% of employees who are underperformers. And we reward those underperformers equal to those top performers. I just don't know how we get away from that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Well, we tried a number of years ago. We had gone away from this pay range chart. We only went up to, I think it was only up to a certain step, and then we had tried to negotiate every year a percentage increase with the council. I don't know if you remember this, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
It was a struggle because there was no rhyme or reason. There was an arbitrary number that ended up being picked, and then we would assign that and try to put people into those boxes of better and worse performers. And so we had individuals in similar positions that were making different rates that may have been hired at the same time and more like the private sector. It was challenging, especially in a lot of our positions, police officers, for instance, they're service-based. And to say your performance is worth more money than another police officer's performance. That's a challenging thing to put into play for service-based positions when you don't have sales that you're achieving or something else that it's not a retail business. And so, we've tried that, and we felt after multiple years that it was difficult and not successful, and so we switched back to this pay range chart. I'm open to ideas.
I think that's why we pay you guys the big bucks. You guys are in charge. You guys are managers. You know who your top performers are. And I don't feel bad for those hard conversations you have to have. I think the entire private sector has hard conversations about performance. And I think I love all our police officers, but I'm sure if you ask Chief, there are good ones and there's great ones.
Sure.
And those great ones should be rewarded accordingly. And it's just hard to, it's just hard. I get that that's tough.
Another challenge in the private sector is salaries and wages are not public. And they are all public in the public sector. And so every single person can compare and know, and it's public knowledge of what their counterpart is making. Yeah. And so when you have those hard conversations, and then I have employees do it often, that they'll look it up. There's a state transparency website that you can go to that shows every single public employee's earnings over a fiscal year for the entire state. And it's updated annually. And so that makes it challenging where you can't keep that information private. And you have to say to one individual why you're paying somebody else another person more. I don't know that happens in the private sector, but I don't know. The knowledge of their pay.
Yeah.
And so that
You
adds
justify
to
the
it.
top receiver in the state of Utah, the number one guy.
University of Utah football coach, I think is it. Yeah, I've Googled that. Yeah, so.
It is, he's at the top.
Can I add 2 cents? And Adam's not gonna like this part very much, but no. Yes, no, it's not bad. Leadership, when it comes to leadership, retaining and having those good people, right? We're a smaller entity. We look at highway patrol starting at 33 an hour for a brand new officer, and some of us are at 28 to 30 in that range there. And obviously we're not competing with Salt Lake and Utah County with guys being recruited to go for $5-6 more an hour on years of service. From my perspective, what I like to see, obviously from my position, all the best peace officers I can get here in the city. Absolutely. I want the highest caliber, the best, the most humble, respectful, intelligent, professional people I can get, which becomes hard when we're looking at this. Well, we're medium, right? We're in that middle section. But I think based on our culture here, we're able to retain and keep good people. Like you said, sometimes we have to do the hard thing. I have to be the punisher, the disciplinary guy, and that's tough as leadership. But understanding that we have to do that to maintain that level of service that we expect here in the city. So part of me is like, I want to be at the top of that range just to be able to keep our quality people. But I understand how the mid-lane, I understand how that works, and as long as we're competitive, I'm going to do my best to keep everybody here. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on.
Yeah, I go ahead.
I was gonna say, your comment on the culture, that's a thank you to administration, department heads, and just the overall feel, and I think council over the years too. I think we all work together for that, but especially for what you guys do to make that be a family and welcoming, want you to know that we appreciate that a ton. And for me, and I say this every year, we look at our citizens, we're taking money from them, we look at the service provider, we're trying to find that balance of being fair to citizens who don't get raises or got big raises or we don't know, and to keep people happy and staying here and being competitive and not overcharging our citizens, all of those things it's just I don't know if any of us know the exact right answer, but I appreciate everybody's collective input in this tough decision each year.
In Public Works, we have the meanest, leanest fighting machine that you can assemble over there. We have a 2-person street crew that are also the plowers, the water operators to fix water leaks, all the streets. All the water guys and sewer guys are snow plowers, dig dig graves, everything, so we're not, when you go look at a comparison for another city, it's a water operator, that guy is just changing meters, doing this specific task. And for us to get to retain the best, so that are multi-certified with water, sewer, all these things, I think the people in my department kind of weed themselves out. If we have a underperformer, I mean, we had a large turnover in water because we don't just say, okay, sorry, I looked at you wrong. You know, it's just, no, this is what we have to do, and people step up and they really care. So I think in that regards, it's kind of hard to measure that I'm just a water operator when they're doing multiple jobs with the same crew.
So you feel like that, expound on that, they weeded themselves out how? Because you expected more?
Right, we hold them accountable, say, hey, this is not getting done right, or they're just.
Within their first year of employment during their probation, we've had significant turnover because they haven't performed up to our standards. So you're not seeing that as part of the merit increase, but that's part of why we've had turnover, is because we've hired new positions and they haven't worked out, and so we've gotten rid of them. I hate to be that blunt, but
No, that's helpful.
we've had other issues in other parts of the city that have been similar, and so I think our obviously every employer would say the same thing. Our goal is to get the right people on the bus,
Right.
And then keep them on the bus.
and then keep them. Yeah.
Once we invest the money to train them and get them there.
Yeah.
Do you guys think we have any of the wrong people on the bus? Do we have any freeloaders? I think typically business books say 20 to 30% of the organization's kind of freeloading. You have your top performers, and it's hard because we are a big family, and I get that. I think this type of structure plays really well for people to leech off the system a little bit, and that's too harsh. And I'm not saying there's anyone leeching off the system, but I imagine it becomes very difficult as managers to get anyone who is to low performers are going to get a raise. They're going to get a 5.1% increase this year. Low performers, our bottom 20% are going to get a 5% raise, and so are our top performers, and that's hard. You know what I mean? I don't know how we address that, but.
I mean, each of our department heads are doing employee evaluations annually, but they're meeting with these individuals and trying to get better performance. We're trying to become more efficient and have better outcomes. So are there better performers than others? Absolutely. Are there terrible freeloaders in Lindon City? I would say no. There are people that could perform better, but I would not classify any of our employees as freeloaders.
That's awesome.
I haven't been involved in a lot of the process. I've been in-house for, 5-6 years now. But I really appreciate the way we use that probationary period to weed out that. And our probationary period is long enough for us to see who is it that's really not fitting, shouldn't be on the bus. And I think we do a good job. The department heads do a really good job of using that time.
No,
for
I love
purpose.
that as a tool. I think that's great. I'll say one last thing, and then I'll shut up for the rest of the night, I promise. I've noticed as I've hired over where I work, the wage number, the dollar they are getting paid is so much more important now than benefits. Have you guys noticed that shift as well as you've hired and tried to maintain?
Yeah, they don't see the value. Newer, younger employees, I should say. Older employees that are coming from somewhere else, that's very much on their mind, is what we've seen. But for younger 20-somethings and into the 30s, it's hard for them to see the value of our retirement system in the state. Really, I got to work 35 years before I can do that and obtain anything there. I mean, those are.
I'm amazed how even like insurance, for example, they don't care. Even if the wage was like sometimes it's your money behind because you're not even looking at that insurance number that you're having to pay, and they just don't even care.
Yeah, and we have on all of our hirings now, or We've included on our offer sheets, here's the list of benefits and everything that comes with it. Has been standard now for us. On a handful of employees that have looked at other places, we've had some over the years where they're not factoring in those benefit issues. And we've had sit-downs with a few and just said, hey, we know you're looking here. Thanks for giving us that heads up. Keep in mind, here's what you're getting here for our benefits. And over there, we've talked with these individuals. You have to pay this much for your insurance, and you only have to pay this much here. And keep these things in mind. And when it comes down to it, that 50 cents an hour raise is wiped out because of some of these
Or
other
less,
things.
right?
So some of it's just education.
One of the questions we ask in our interviews, why do you want to come to work for a city? You know, when they are in the process, I want benefits. I want benefits for my family. The younger kids, yes, I'm after the money, but if it's a person that has a family, says, I want the benefits, I want the insurance, I want that security, so.
It's good to know.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mayor.
Just before we leave that topic really quickly, I have talked with some other cities, and there is a shift happening where, you know, they are, as Adam said, sometimes they're calling it different things, but there are potentially different approaches where, say, maybe the COLA is the same for everybody, or like last year, Cedar Hills just did an across the board $1 something per hour for everybody. And then what they're doing is they'll say, okay, your department, let's assume the merit is this percentage of your budget. I'm gonna give you, chief, this many dollars, your percent equals this amount of dollars, and now you can give the merit to person differently than just a flat, 2.6 for everybody across the board. So there have been some discussions with some other cities that are doing that. I know in the private sector, that's fairly common as well.
Yeah.
So not everyone gets the same merit.
I agree. We have employees that probably would deserve a little bit more than others. At the same point, in public safety at least, you saw the, what do they call that? Quotas, where you can't base performance. And not that I'm that way, and we don't do that. We base it on level of service provided and what they do during the course of their shifts and how productive they are in a lot of different areas. So I think that would be a little more, I'd be interested to know how some of the other entities are doing that related to specifically public safety, how they gauge that performance factor, and there's different ways to do that. But I agree. I think there's employees that do deserve more than some others, but how do
We don't
gauge
ever want it to be based on tickets, no, we don't want that.
No.
Ever.
We don't do.
We like that idea of educating and
Make that
helping and being that
very
present.
clear.
Yes.
That doesn't happen.
Remind me, in my mind, we were last year or the year before started requiring a small portion by the employees to pay the insurance. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Okay,
Been several years.
last several
It was
years.
back when Mayor Easterson was still the mayor.
That the employees are paying a portion of that insurance.
Yeah.
Remind me what percentage that is. Are we
It's 3%.
90%, he says. Okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe we increase that so that we have more for wages is something that we could potentially look at.
Something to keep in mind, you mentioned the chart and how it's increased. We are a growing city, and so as Chase and I had a discussion on that upward tick in the green line there. Some things that we've done over just the last few years since you guys have been here. The last couple of years, we changed our our emergency manager position to a 3/4 benefited position. That was by motion of the city council. And so we've changed downstairs in our community development. We've had increased workloads. We changed a part-time to a full-time. We've added new lifeguards as we built new amenities like the slide or things like that. And so we are a growing city, so I hope you keep that in mind, that new positions have come up. We've changed the structure in some of the departments, like the police department, added a new sergeant position and new corporal positions. So
It's not just raises, it's just
Yeah,
not.
the
all
expectation that,
That's a good point.
yeah, that
It's a valid one,
this should be
for sure.
flat or not increasing, I don't think that's realistic with a growing city.
In Public Works, if you remember, we went from 4 superintendents to 2 superintendents, making that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, and we love you. Like, I hope that these conversations, that you don't leave feeling like, oh, Councilmember Hoyt hates us, because I love you guys. I really do, and I appreciate the work, and as top performers, and I know you guys are great. I look at what you have to do from a managerial standpoint, and it's tough. It is tough, and I appreciate the work you're doing, and I hope it doesn't come through as the opposite of that, so.
thanks.
No, I mean, you guys are the one that
He
have to
doesn't-
make the financial decisions, so we understand that.
And that's
we're
the why, right? As council members, is the financial, the fiduciary responsibility, but we appreciate you.
Those hard conversations that you were saying is hard to have as a leader, huh? That's what you're doing.
I'm curious about the probationary program. I haven't heard about it. Is that something you can share with the rest of us in 15 seconds, or I'm happy to do a one-off?
Yeah, no, it's every new employee, or if somebody's assuming a new position, they've been promoted, or moving into a different position in the city, it's a 6-month minimum probationary period, so they can be discharged for any reason, any cause. Typically, we are extending that to 12 months for brand-new employees that we haven't worked with. And so it's a minimum 6, usually 12-month probationary period.
All the way across the board, police officers,
Yeah.
Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
Anybody? Does that include part-timers and full-timers?
Part-timers are assumed always at-will employees, yeah.
Shoot, there's one more.
For me, that's a
Oh,
great,
what-
oh, go ahead, you just remembered.
How do you work with them during that probationary period to help them understand that they're meeting or not meeting expectations? Are you meeting with them weekly, monthly?
Yeah, it depends on the department and the individuals, but,
You pull their ears daily if needed,
We just had that experience. We hired an individual who was just underperforming. And before, he actually resigned, and it wasn't because of pressure we were placing on him, it was because we set expectations and we were following expectations. And then he knew he couldn't meet them. It was very amicable. He says, I gotta find something different. I can't make your expectations. We shook hands and we split. So I think that's the benefit. And he was a part-timer. So I think that's the benefit. We chase the individual with high expectations and pull their ears, like Juan said, and just try to make sure that they meet it or that they know that they're not gonna meet it.
Is this something that's common throughout the municipal environment, or is this something Lindon's recently done? Or?
It's pretty,
I think it's
pretty
very
common.
standard.
It's common in most public, in schools. It was the same thing. As a principal, I had responsibility to hire teachers and staff, and we always had a probationary period. Ours was up to 3 years, so it was nice. But that is a huge check and balance for me. So when you brought that up, I didn't realize that's what we did or what the details were. But that's a struggle. The whole idea of people getting the same amount of money for maybe different levels of work. But I look at our department heads and know that we have talented, caring individuals who will want to have the best and that they'll use that time well. But at the end of the day, we have a great culture. We get pats on the back. We recognize and award, but it's that check at the end and what they can do for their families, and that's that's I think what we need to keep in mind. I love the idea of this. As much as it hurts sometimes, I think somebody's getting as much as our better employees might hurt a little, but I think in the long run, this checks and balances we have in place give us what we need there.
We do get a lot of compliments on you guys, residents, neighbors, friends that meet with you individually, one-on-one. Always great.
Thanks.
People
If-
that meet
if
with
you
you
do
one-on-one,
see-
always great compliments, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. If you do see areas that we can improve, please let us know. Or if there's employees that you're like, hey, I see this person sitting in their truck on the side of the road every day. And yeah, we want to know that. So if there's those kind of comments that come back to you, please let us know.
I was gonna say, the guy with the lights on and, yeah.
I was gonna say, you want me to tell you about that, Steve? Because after city council, he sits in my car a long time and just talks.
Okay, we're gonna move on. We'll talk more about this. This is just giving you the high-level pictures here, and we'll discuss it again in future budget meetings, so. Let's go on to number 5, department-specific updates. Juan, you wanna go through? Oh, yes, please, thanks. I didn't wanna,
Back to the happy stuff.
I'm shredding that.
On streets, I have this other map here with some color lines on it. This is the road maintenance wish list. On the left, there's this legend. Orange means a microsurface, so it's just a thin layer of asphalt, gives it a brand new feel. All those roads labeled in orange are, we can get away with that kind of project. The red is the 625 and 600 North, that little horseshoe that's been settling for ever since it's built. It's just really bumpy. Then we have the rehabilitation, which is mostly a mill and overlay. So that is bringing a mill, taking down about an inch of the edges, and then laying like an 1.5 inch, 2 inch overlay on the middle of the road, recreating a crown for better drainage. Seal coat is just add a little wear surface to it, a very thin layer. And then on the purple is the ones that will require the utility work underneath, which is Gilman, 135, Center Street, Lakeview, and then 900 East. And the back is the estimates from Trent, our assistant city engineer, and he put those square footages for seal coat and the cost per square foot. The microsurface, 50 cents. That mill overlay is $3 a square foot, and then the full reconstruction, where the same thing we did on Center Street and Canyon Road, which is pulverize all the road, reshape it, and then put another 3-inch layer of asphalt. With those projects that do not require any utility work, we're looking at about $1.5 million for that. I just checked with Kristen, and says our road fund that I should probably budget for is more into the $2 million. So that pretty much puts a delay on doing the reconstructive pavement on 900 East, 135, Lakeview, Gilman, and Center Street, because that puts us at, I'm gonna take the last 2 lines, the 200 South and 400 North. We're gonna take those out to make our finances better. So that new total, instead of being 2.4 million, it will be 1.656, with a new grand total of 3.132. So with the amount of money we have on the road fund, according to the reserves, that sheet that she was showing us earlier with how much we have in reserves, that probably won't, I'll probably just work my budget off of a $2 million for road reconstruction. So I'll have to check the crystal ball again and see what projects we can pull off and make that borrowing scenario smaller, and then just kick those projects down the road, unless we find another 1.2 million somewhere.
But it wouldn't have to just be in roads, it'd have to be in the utilities.
No, the utilities are being funded with that borrowing scenario. So this is just to finish the road, putting the surface back on. The other thing I can do is delay some of the projects on the top. eliminating that 1.4 million on the top and focus on the 1.7 on the bottom to reconstruct the roads with utilities. What do you guys think?
I'm wondering your opinion with Gilman Lane. Not knowing yet what's going to happen with the property there behind the church.
That's been my
Will we
question
need
too.
to give Gilman a beautiful, brand-new street all the way up to Los Hermanos Estate when that's gonna be closed off and no longer be a road?
So on Gilman, what we do need in bigger need is the sewer upsize.
And does that have to tag into state?
No, well,
The
the
underground.
sewer, yeah, we have to go all the way to state to do that section, and then also the water line while we're at it. But we can delay the Gilman part and just do the Lakeview. They'll probably say, hey, how come?
Yeah, I know
There are
the
gonna be
residents on
complaints, but,
Lakeview, they would love to see
right.
that work done, but I was looking at that east end of Gilman.
Yeah,
wondering if we-
for mobilization and trying to get a cheaper price, when you get a contractor to do all the underground at the same time, we get a better bang for our buck, because we don't pay for mobilization twice, but I can, the question is, do we want to, if we stay to that $2 million figure that is available for C roads, do we kick the can more on 600, on the lines that are not purple? Either focus on the purple or focus on the other colored roads.
Tell me one on 900 East. I mean, the timing of the temple, we don't know when that open house is gonna be. This is construction that would likely occur this
So-
fall.
So the underground will be kind of how we did it on the Canyon, Canal Drive and Center Street, do the work in the fall where we can get the best prices for installation of utilities.
Yeah.
Go through the winter, just passable, and then first thing in the spring, pave the roads.
I know we talked about 9th East not tagging into the cul-de-sacs, the 3 cul-de-sacs. Do those also have a need for the water line reconstruction as well?
Yes.
And would we be saving pennies but losing dollars right now to not just do that in one swoop?
Same thing, it's just, if we do 900 East and not do the cul-de-sacs, then when we have to come and do the cul-de-sacs and do all the construction equipment, we're driving heavy equipment back
Exactly,
on
I'm just wondering if we
Yes.
try to,
on
I know
that
there's
po-
been pros and cons
Right.
talking about that.
Right. At that point, we're kind of painting ourselves into a corner to do this, but then we have to, that's why we did all the cul-de-sacs at the same time when we did Canal Drive,
Right.
where we just said, okay, let's do the water lines.
I think to your question, my reaction is, top of the list, bottom of the list. I think the residents that talk to me would have a harder time understanding why 570 North and Songbird Lane got seal coated and 135 West is a gravel road. Like, I think it would be hard for them to wrap their mind around that. So I would go to the side of the purple as opposed to, and I know that there's wisdom in saying keep newer roads and better repair because it's cheaper and they'll last longer.
Right.
I think there's just some of these purple roads that understandably, project after project, they're getting bumped. And those voices understandably are much more prominent in my mind than, I haven't had anyone from 570 North, reach out and say, I think ours is due for a seal coat, don't you? I haven't had anyone do that, but I have had time and time again people saying like this one. So I would err on the side on at least 135 West, the purple and Lakeview Drive. If Gilman Lane, if there's a question mark about what it will be in the near future, I could see that, but those purple for sure, really. And then the 600, 625 North, like these are ones that I mean,
Hear about it.
that is all the time. Like, hey, Cole, I mean, it's like now it's a joke.
That's where you live.
Yeah, right? And so when I'm walking, that's the
The
thing I hear all
purple
the time.
costs the
But
most.
the purple is more about the utility work underneath than the smoothness of the road on top, right?
Oh, no, the
It's
roads
both.
are
It's
done.
both.
I
The
mean,
roads
go,
are
go to,
toast.
On top of that number.
It's like you won't have to dig much for 135 West. Like, there's not much stripping you
you
need to
don't have to
do.
remove much asphalt.
I got a shovel, you know what I'm saying, like,
Now, I thought that with new development, we were requiring them to do their own seal coat, like when it's Songbird, they have to be doing the seal coat themselves on that development, being a new one?
No, once they get the road paved, they're done with it.
I thought we had talked about requiring new development to do a seal coat.
I know we've talked about
We've
that.
talked about it.
I know that's come up, but for some reason,
It would be a good
state
idea.
legislation sticks in my mind,
Yeah.
but we'll have to ask.
Now, we can delay,
The 1 year mark, they come back to the seal code.
you can see, that's the cheapest. I mean, we're looking at 30 cents a square foot,
Right.
and that just adds,
Length since a life, but I know that
Yeah.
we've talked about in the past, do we want to make that ordinance that in?
I don't think it's in our ordinance or in our development agreements or anything like that. Once it gets paved, gets turned over to us, we have a year warranty, and then we accept the roads.
Something to look into.
I'll look into it.
I agree. I mean, 135 is that little strip there. And that's a highly used road because of the programming at our Central Park. So that's, to me, has been a priority for a long time. So that one is for sure in my mind. 900 East, I know we've gone back and forth, like, should we get in there really quick before Temple has all the hundreds of people coming for open house, get that in decent shape? I'm just a little, I wish we were tagging the cul-de-sacs at the same time that we undergo that project, but.
Yeah, and the cul-de-sacs, we wouldn't do a full asphalt reconstruction. It will be just digging a trench, putting the new water line,
Yeah.
patch, and then eventually do a micro or just a rehabilitation with a mill and overlay.
Or council, you can always, decide to appropriate a little bit more to roads than what figures you're looking at. And that has been done before. And I see Van getting excited.
Well, no, my comment and the smile was, when you're talking about the budget, we start talking about, the very first thing we talked about into Cole's comment, yeah, that sounds good, but let's wait and see. So this is a great thing, this is a great thing, this is a great, and then you go, whoa. Okay, now what do you have to do to start coming back into something we can afford and do it? It's just the process. Like you're building a new house and and then it gets to wherever you're gonna end up.
I am concerned on 900 East timing. Well, the open house, we have no idea.
I mean, and the open house is gonna be really busy, and we can probably just say, that's the road we have, that's the road we have.
Yeah.
And then, couple years after the temple is functioning and things settle down, hey, this winter, we're gonna shut it down here, and the access is what it is.
yeah.
It won't, yeah. Can we make it last another year?
Yeah, we've made Lakeview,
Yeah, I was like, we've lasted. Yeah.
just keep doing some potholing and just fixing more leaks. We haven't had, since we've done, Matt's done a great job pushing for rebuilding all the PRV, so we haven't had a leak in months.
You just used your words.
Okay, let's move on. We haven't heard anything. We don't know. We've asked their project manager and others several times, and we don't get any answers.
Turning into the Salt Lake Temple.
Yeah.
So on the funding, just kind of let me know what number I should shoot for, and then I'll do some more planning and modeling and.
So you have 2 million.
I'm we're
That's
gonna
all.
work with the 2 million that we have on the C road funds in the bank right now.
Okay. And then the question is if there's more forthcoming, and then another question is just what to do with the two?
No, I know what to,
This is proposed.
I know what to do, you just tell me how much money, and then I'll make a proposal and say, okay, I think that we need to do this roads, and I'll give you a new map
Okay.
with that budget number.
So this all doesn't add to 2 million now, right? Just
So
this
you took
section.
off these bottom two.
So without the bottom two numbers, it's at about
Just
3.15.
this and not that. Okay.
So when you're saying 2 million, are you just talking these projects? Or are you talking everything together?
So if we go at 2 million, I can do all the ones on the bottom, and maybe throw the seal coat.
That matches more what I think it's like, do the big rocks first and then go with the monies that are left, do the
Little stuff.
little stuff to keep things well. But that's just one opinion.
That will be about 2 million would be to do all the projects on the bottom that require utility work, and then do the seal coat on the top that takes a 322, and that keeps the new roads new, with the prescribed treatment.
And then you would have some flex on the 280 for 900 East if the timing doesn't make sense to do that right now. That could be used.
Yeah, you tell me what, how much money, and then I'll make a proposal. and-
Yeah.
You see that as about the same size of a project as Canal Drive was?
On
As far as
900
how
East?
many, the distance, the length, and how many,
No, it's about a third of the size of what we did on
a
Canal
little
Drive.
bit easier, quicker.
Yeah. We have, what, 3 cul-de-sacs up there?
The same level of intensity.
I'm talking the main leg, not including the cul-de-sacs, is about the same distance as
No,
Canal.
it's only 2 blocks. It's Center Street to 200 South on 9th East.
Okay, Canal is 4 blocks, I guess.
Canal was
Four,
4th all the way to 630 North.
Oh, if you count that part of it.
Then we did
Yeah.
the one leg,
I was thinking just a 400.
and then we did all the cul-de-sacs in 630. Yeah, it was a lot of work, and we got a really good deal. So the first bid came at 4 million, and we ended up doing it for 2.2. So
That's awesome.
it was,
They would bid again.
they're all saying, "Do you have any work for this fall?" For next fall. Okay.
You got enough direction on that?
Yep.
Let's keep going here. We're,
400 west, 400 north, traffic calming.
we can recommend something later. We'll skip that. And then well number 5, anything new that you need to bring up?
Nope, just, we're doing the development right now, and our engineers gave us a kind of cost of what it will do to do those connections at 3.5 million, plus the million to do the connections on the road. And then we went out to bid for cemetery phase number 2. We had the the pre-bid, and then we'll have bids here within the next 10 days to 2 weeks, so see how
We
that
had
turns out.
12 different companies show up to that, so we're hoping for.
And 3
a
that
great
are,
number on that.
have experience, building cemeteries.
We had talked about putting money aside for the cemetery. Did we do that? We had talked about, like last time, we were gonna put $500,000 into a fund in a capital improvement to knowing it was gonna go to the cemetery.
I thought, Kristen, you'd said that had to get used.
Yeah, I think we ended up moving that out for something else.
Yeah.
We may have some money that we can put towards that, a few $100,000. But I do remember we had moved something out of that last year, and I don't remember why. Oh, it was the pool liner issues, okay.
We are at
Always something.
72% sold, and
And you're just dying to get in.
with the,
Boom.
we raised the fee, so we've just been steady, big downturn from, I guess, COVID. We had over 130 plots sold in 1 year, and this year we're about 30, 40. So really, one, we don't have COVID. Two, probably people are going somewhere else to find a plot. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Chief, anything you want to bring up?
Just very briefly, I'm not, our vehicles are due to be changed out coming October, it's the lease program, part of that. And then any additions, we're gonna start a drone program, so we can reconstruct accidents, find missing people, infrared thermal technology. That'll be a big asset, so we won't have to rely on another agency to come in and help us reconstruct serious accidents and fatals, things like that. That technology there. But anything I'm looking for this upcoming year, program-wise, will be offset from my equipment line from last year, having purchased that stuff out. So I'm not asking for anything significant related to capital stuff.
So on the drone program, is that you create officers that are drone pilots, then can operate these that somebody else?
Yeah, in preparation, we have to be certified through the FAA and obtain warrants for certain types of uses. But I have an officer that's already obtained all that certification and ready to go, so.
Okay, thanks. This next group there, we've already heard from Mike earlier tonight, parks and facilities and equipment, or vehicles and equipment. Just really quick, wanted to give you a heads up that we've looked, we've got another agency, PG actually, has for a few years purchased Tacomas, Toyota Tacomas, and flipped them after a year of use. And what we've heard is they almost make money off of that. And so Alex went out and contacted a couple, this was the very last page of that spreadsheet, or the data that we sent out to you earlier with the agenda. So he's priced this out. We've gotten so far just two companies where they've given us bids on, with our current, we've got several F-150 trucks that we rotated into our fleet that were purchased vehicles that we had from the police department. And on the third year, we're having significant problems. We've had 3 that have had transmission rebuilds already, and they're only 30 to 50,000 miles on it. 4 now. And we found them to be very unreliable. So we want to get rid of those F-150s. As we talked with PG, they've, as I mentioned, gone to Tacomas and these would be positions, we're just looking 6 or 7 positions that we're not gonna beat these up. So inspectors, administrative use,
And these would be
department heads.
to buy outright, not
Buy
lease.
outright. And so, on the far right of this then, so Alex got a bid there for 42,000 on that Tacoma. The current Kelly Blue Book with less than 15,000 miles, it loses value. This is, the far right column is how much value they lose over a year if you were to sell it with 15,000 miles. So if we're only losing 1,600, we're driving a vehicle for $120 a month. It's a pretty dang good deal. So we would like to try that. These are SR5s, Tacomas. They aren't like the top of the line off-road models. But wanted to give you a heads up that we would be obviously offsetting the cost of this by selling the other existing vehicles. But the maintenance on these, Alex made a comment to me, he said, I'm never buying a Ford again. And so, and he drives a Ford, so. Yeah. We've had a lot of recalls on them too. Yeah, I think.
They drive these home at night, right?
No. Most of these stay. So we have a handful, you've got a couple superintendents that are taking a vehicle home at night for utilities. And I am driving one home at night, and police, and that's probably it. So most of them are parked. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So we think that'll actually end up being a good deal for the city. And if we treat the vehicles good, and we might actually potentially make money. PG said they've actually made money off of a few of theirs after driving it for a year. And keep in mind, we have I forget what the discount is on our government purchase contract. It's 10 or 15%
This price
less.
doesn't include it?
No, this is our government rate. And so we're buying them cheaper because of that government rate. Nothing illegal about it. We're just saying we're gonna surplus this after a year and buy again. And hopefully we'll bring our costs way down instead of on the F-150 losing $7,500 a year in value on a resale and all of the maintenance headache. So,
That government rate, everybody, all the manufacturers,
yeah,
give some sort of government rate?
yeah. So, and they don't have to give us a bid. They could pass and just say, we're not gonna do that. They're not obligated to sell it to us, but these were numbers they gave after solicitation, so. Aquatic Center, Heath, you wanna talk about those next few items there?
Yeah, we've got a couple of things that are on our table right here immediately. We've done the first half of redoing the pool surface, and now we're into the area of the pool where the pirate ships are. And we're gonna have to lift those ships off to do that, and if they survive, and we think they will. We had the guy that wants to move them or refurbish them for us, he came out and toured and looked at it and says, yeah, these are pieces, we can take them off with a crane. And, you know, a local company like Woods Crane did that for us. They've got lifting lugs on, just how they got them in. But then we figured, and then we're gonna do the surface, but then we figured we put them back, you better refurbish those ships so we can get another 15 or 20 years out of that. So that includes the replacing the liner and refurbish the pirate ships in the pirate pool. The liner has got to be replaced. We think a significant amount of our leaks are coming from that. There's also another issue in the tunnel that we have. You remember it has a fountain that's engineered to dump on one end, a mandatory wet, you know, that dumps in the river. The tray, which is embedded in that concrete, is cracked and it's leaking bad, and it leaks out the back. And now when you go through there, you can look up and see where it looks a little iffy on the shotcrete up there. So we've abandoned that, we've turned that off. We had a plan made to maybe do something different, and it's just exterior pipe, where we use the same pump, and we're gonna exterior pipe and redo that amenity. A need, no, a want, something we need to do, and we need to study to make sure we're not having pieces of that shotcrete come down and splash in the pool. We think we're okay there. Flow rider pumps, it's been 6 or 7 years since we pulled those out. Remember, if they go out mid-season, one of them even goes out mid-season, we're losing a lot of revenue on parties. We have weekends every night. They need to be stood up, and they need to be either serviced or replaced. Everybody now is just replacing those and dropping refurbished ones in instead of pulling the seals and trying to do all that stuff yourself. We have a maintenance reserve for unforeseen large items. And then we rebuild pumps every year. We just got our big activity pool pump back, and it had big holes in the volute and in the fan. So it's good that we redid that. We need to replace the media, the sand in the sand filters. We did a little bit of that the last 3 years. Slide maintenance we do to keep our slides, like our roads, from having a crack or something significant happen. And then pool deck maintenance, which is sealing the concrete and keeping that nice. So that's the number we're looking at for pools. We do have on the agenda a little lower down, you'll see, we might as well talk about it now. Do we need to repair that waterfall? It's an amenity that's missing. If it's not dangerous, what we're planning to do would not make it any safer, actually. It would just bring that amenity back. Could we get away without that? We probably could. But we're just listing the items that we need to consider for the pool as the black hole continues to spin and suck money in.
With that alternative option, what the cost would be on that versus this 100K?
We had a preliminary plan made and a cost for the plan. Just this last week, we've been chasing it for a long time, but we finally trying to get CEM to give us a price, an estimated price. Because it's not new pumps, it's just new pipe through the wall and then an exterior pipe split. And we would like to drop one in front and in back and make it like a grotto and decorate it with skeletons. It's a pirate, pirate ship stuff. So I do not know what it's gonna cost. We estimate $100,000. It could be 50, unlikely, but it even could be a little bit more, which is, I think we're pretty close to where we need to be. But we can come back with a better number. We're soliciting those numbers now. Questions with any of that stuff?
Any firm direction on the waterfall feature right now?
Pirate ship, pool, rebuild, that whole area kind of leaking, and that seems like a need versus a want. It's highly used. Waterfall, as you mentioned, Heath, more of a want item. How does this proposal compare to past years that we've subsidized the pool? Is this a larger hit list of things to do?
I mean, what do you think, Adam?
This is very similar to.
Yeah, I think it's about similar.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get.
That we replaced over the last 2 seasons, and then again this year we've got more to do.
And how much of this
that was
would
$1
come
million.
from our park tax?
Based on the percentages that we had
Yeah,
split
what
out.
you've decided the percentage would be.
So maybe on the waterfall.
Yeah,
We can talk it about again.
Yeah, don't.
We're going on 3 hours, everybody's starting at 10 here, so.
I think when you
Anything else, Heath,
if
that
we
you
do bring
wanna-
back the waterfall, I like turning it into like a pirate grotto theme. That would be really fun.
That's easy.
Yeah,
We
just-
need it, because it'll be a little bit darker and we can use lights in there and with the water dropping. So, yeah. And then if there's anything else, it's just the community center stuff we talked about already. Those shingles, the floor needs to be redone to protect it. That's 5,000. And then we do have a need, some of the sound is going out in the gym. We're getting to a point now where the amplifiers are getting so old. Last year we did the Powell Auditorium. This year we were proposing to do the gym so we can have events and shows in that, wireless. So that would be an upgrade. The gym walls, that sisal, that sisal that's all over them, that would be an upgrade, not a huge thing. Steam valves for the boilers need to be done. And then there's the parking lot, which again is about $150,000 we think in that area. Any comments on that or?
Which of these items, I'm assuming sound system could be repurposed? Wouldn't necessarily,
No, I think it's not new speakers. I think it's just the structure itself and a wireless connection and a new
so
amplifier.
I guess what I'm saying is old building, convert to the new building. Some items could be pulled out and repurposed in a new building
suspect they could.
versus
I
destroyed.
I think probably our plan, we could limp along with this. It's just like we decided maybe Band-Aids and plugs and new amplifier as parts come. This would be a whole package to get it all done. And that sound system's pretty old. But
How often do we use it? I mean, how many
for
shows are
the
we?
sound, I would say probably several times a month, but not weekly. I mean, there's a lot more sports going on in there, but we do have acting groups that come in. We do have people who use the stage. The boutiques don't use it. Lots of graduations, school graduations, kids graduations, preschool. So I would say a couple of times, 3 or 4 times a month, would probably be safe.
I would like to look at the gym walls to see if that needed to be done. You've heard me say on the parking lot, the boilers, we probably have no choice. Sound system, I'm not sure on.
Well,
I
the
just
sound
went-
system, I guess I wasn't clear. if we invested in the sound system, that's something we could piece out. And if it was still had life in it, we could use it elsewhere. It wouldn't be an investment that gets destroyed
Yeah, I think we
potentially.
could easily.
Okay.
Okay, we can talk this through more and bring some more info back to you, so, on the community center.
If there's anything else on
Yeah,
there?
anything else on those lists that you guys see that you wanna discuss tonight?
One place at the Veterans Hall, 10,000 for on-demand water heaters, as opposed to just a regular water heater. I assume we have them, and it could just be replaced, or,
Are you
Just
talking
have a
about like
water
an,
heater.
are you talking about an inline instead of having a big
Yeah.
boiler that's heating all the time, a tank of
All
40
the time.
gallons? Yeah,
Yeah,
because
and
it
so
sits
that's the only
idle.
thought, just inline when it's on demand, instead of that boiler, and the boiler needs, or the boiler, that hot water heater needs to be replaced, and it probably does. So I think that was Alex's big drive to get it, just so we could use it when we need it.
when you say it needs to be replaced, sorry, the contractor and maintenance comes out. How long has it been there? Is it not performing now? Is it starting to fill with sediment? Can the
It's
sediment
got
be
full of sediment,
drained?
And it might be, could be drained. Again, this is kind of an Alex's cue here, but I don't know how far he's gone on that, but, it's not heating efficiently and it's sediment filled. So I think anything could be done to that. I don't think it's rusting out. I don't think it's, and the pan is getting filled or anything like that, but that'd probably be a better question for Alex.
Do you have a water softener there?
No.
Yeah, so the mineral.
Yeah, I guess I just don't replace water heaters until you need to replace them in the buildings that I own.
Most of the daytime, this isn't being used, right?
Correct.
And so it's keeping water heated
Every weekend.
yeah, until the weekends, so I think that was probably part of his thoughts was going to that on-demand system, but we can zero in on that one more.
You always get an inspector, right?
I mean, I have a property in St. George we go down to, we turn it off, turn it down when we go, and we turn it back up when we come back.
I don't think I want patrons doing that. but, I mean, if they need it, turn it up, but, you know, it's once or twice a week and then every weekend for a couple of hours, so I think we ought to discuss that with Alex and just see what he's thinking there.
Do they need hot water?
Certainly. Certainly, that's not my point. 10,000 is a ton of money for hot water in a building like that.
is that? It's one.
That's the price, the going rate now. That's how they do one.
I think I spent $1,300 for my last water heater that had
I
to be
mean, but
replaced.
for the inline kind, yeah, they're a little bit more.
There's
We'll get better
a lot of different opinions on the inlines.
We'll get a better.
Some are good and some are
Yeah.
really bad.
We'll get a better idea and bring it when we get closer.
Master plans, you wanna talk about?
Yeah,
that?
we're looking to, we'll put some money in there this year to master plan the East Bench, which we haven't really done much at. Utah Valley Trails Alliance, I just sent them a letter again of support at a grant that they're gonna go for and do some of the work above our trail, and those trails above us, but we'd like to master plan that area and also the city center park, which we've talked about. Before I got this printed, I thought, boy, I wasted a lot of ink for, you guys have seen, you can take one of these, you've seen the flood that the baseball field had. I've got pictures here of the flood and the cost it costs to get Juan more under control with his stormwater and water. But I was thinking I shouldn't have wasted my time. If you haven't seen it, please pick one of these up. But also I looked at different ways to just make that grass field, instead of a parking lot, maybe multi-use. The best price I can get on just those pavers that have grass come through is $200,000 to do that whole field. I mean, let's just park on the dirt or whatever. But we'd like to get those master planned so we can get some of the nefarious activities out of that area. We've talked about pickleball courts, but we're really shooting at these grants and we don't have a plan. And so we'd like to get that master planned up there. We've got a couple of good contractors we've talked to that do that sort of thing. So that and just the city center park, what can be done there before we pull the trigger on the grant.
And I think part of what Heath's getting at is our grant writer that we work with, Ron Clake. So we're on the phone with him a lot, between Adam, Heath, and I, and really the competition for the different grants that you can get for these recreation grants, the competition has increased a lot, and the packages that cities submit are more sophisticated. And so putting together, when you're gonna go for a grant, we were really blessed that we got, for example, the arena grant. And so Ron's just feeling like he's seeing what the other submissions are, and he's saying, we really need to, these other cities put together a slick, very nice package of a full master plan, and, it's just really well presented. So to compete, if we want to get some of these free dollars, it would be beneficial.
And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was these pickleball courts, the pickleball courts at what's the name of that park? Hollow Park, or down to the concrete, those players, you've seen it, we've talked a lot about it. I've got 2 bids, I'm waiting on 2 bids, I've got another 3rd bid from a guy that many of you know, $39,000 to resurface those. I tell you that because they need to be done, but also when we build to maintain. So as we build new pickleball courts and we build that stuff, that's done correctly. It's not just putting this stuff down and lining them. I really trust what your guys suggested. Sam. But it's $39,000 to get those, and the tennis court as well. The tennis court is not so worn out, but we might as well if we're gonna get in there. And Sam suggested that we even abandon the tennis. The use is very low, you guys, and put 2 pickleball courts in there.
I would consider dual purposing it.
Yeah, he wanted to put ghost lines in, but the problem is who's gonna yield the court? When the 2 tennis people show up and there's 8 people playing pickleball. How are you gonna yield that court? And when we get rid of that, they still have tennis courts at the junior high. But I'm setting in spring, I'm gonna set a trail cam on that tennis court and just watch it and just see what we get, so.
So just let us know the dates and we'll just let our peeps know to play a lot more pickleball.
Not those, tennis. I'm watching the tennis. So you can keep people out, I guess, lock it up.
Yeah.
So I think that's it, Adam, for this stuff.
Your hollow park restripe, it's resurfaced and restripe. It's not just restripe, right? I mean, it's paint full surface.
Yeah, it's take it down and redo it correctly.
Thanks. Any other questions on facilities? We'll bring these all up again in a future meeting, so. Fire EMS dispatch services, really quick, I sent out to the council a copy of this presentation that Spanish Fort Chiefs helped put together. He was immensely helpful, very willing with his time.
The only thing I was looking for was what are we paying now?
We are currently paying $2.2 million for fire and EMS service. What's been requested and anticipated is that would go up to $2.8 million if we were to pay what Orem currently wants us to pay.
With that extra body?
That would be, so we added an extra crew person on all the shifts last year. They're asking for another one. They want to go to six people per shift on each crew. And so that addition plus their additional cost to cover their other needs. So as soon as possible, if they had their druthers, they would say it's 2.8 million. In the grand scheme of things, though, when you look at this comparison of do we start our own station, we're probably getting a deal with Orem.
Your Spanish Fork, right? Your Spanish Fork?
Yeah.
Is that an equivalent size fire department, or is this?
They're larger. They have 2 stations and fully man that full-time.
So I think you have 20.
Right, so he actually, those are numbers based on what Lindon's needs would be.
Okay.
Yeah,
Those are-
so as we talked and we said, here's how many bodies we would expect in our station. If we were just manning our current facility, that would be his estimate. So about 7 million, almost 8 million in upfront purchases and costs, startup costs, and then 3.2 2, I think it was, 3.3 million.
No, just
on-
about, just 3,
Okay.
yeah, about 3 million.
3 million on annual operating. So when you factor in the aspect of, there's multiple things to think about. The headache of having to hire and fire all of those people and manage all of them. And that's not on our shoulders if we contract that out. The aspect of rotating, I mean, we've got equipment listed in there for an upfront, but then you've got equipment that has to be replaced in a number of years. That's not factored into this. Those are all costs that.
If you go with Tacoma fire trucks, you could make money.
Yeah, so interestingly, I think BYU is doing the same thing. Next time you guys go to BYU, all of their security are driving Tacomas now, if you'll notice. I saw that the other day, so.
Interestingly, I had a chance to talk with Chief Sanderson about a week ago. As you know, we're kind of in a trifecta with Vineyard also contracting with them. And so they are very keen on wanting to keep the relationship. And I think the other things besides what Adam mentioned that he pointed out to me was the level of service that they're able to provide because of their critical mass size. We could never duplicate the level of service and the equipment and that's just to get a basic setup. And he mentioned another city that is small. I won't name names here publicly. You can ask me after. There is a sense of like brotherhood where you're going to go, even if we were alone, maybe they would come and help us on calls potentially that were a big deal that needed, just like our police do. But they said there are some cities that are small, kind of doing their own thing. And what happens is they only have one crew, and if that crew's somewhere here and they have a secondary thing happen at the same time, they're calling on these bigger agencies to come in and support. And he said it's getting to the point where they're kind of leaning a little bit unfairly too much on the sister larger cities, and he said we probably should start giving them a bill. So that's one of the advantages too is, they can serve multiple calls at the same time potentially and get there quickly, so.
I've reached out to Pleasant Grove and just on a high level, their administration essentially didn't feel that contracting with Lindon would bring benefit to their city. Their station is kind of on the south central end of the city, and where they have a lot of needs for faster response is on the north end of their city. And so that was, bottom line, they said they weren't interested to give us a proposal. And I've also reached out to Unified Fire. They would be willing to give us a proposal. Eagle Mountain actually just contracted with them a year or 18 months ago and became part of the Unified Taxing District. That is, to me, the biggest downside to looking at them is you lose 100% of authority on that. And it's a property tax change to our residents and businesses, so.
So doing that, they would use our station, but they would provide the truck, equipment, et cetera, and the personnel.
And they generate money through a property tax, and so is how they assess that. You'd become part of a special service district essentially for fire and EMS. So me personally, I didn't feel like that was appealing, where we've got a good relationship with Orem and you have some fair amount of say in how things are done, where we own the facility, and that would be different than most of their other models as far as Unified goes, so. But they were willing to give us a proposal. If that's of interest, we can explore that, but I think bottom line, after talking with Spanish Fork and some other chiefs I've reached out to and talked to several, we're probably in a good spot to stay with Orem. So I will continue to negotiate with them. We're meeting with their chief and their administration in a couple weeks again to pick up kind of where we left off a few months back. And they are looking to reconfigure how they charge Lindon and Vineyard. And they want to implement that as soon as possible. Last year, when this came up, I got to a point where I'll be honest, I said, look, we have a contract through 2028. You agreed to it. that's what I'm paying. So I kind of put my foot down. They were asking for several $100,000 more for no change in level of service. And so keeping that in mind in 2028 when we have to renew this, it's actually, we have to renew a year ahead of time, so 2027, we will have a significant increase, but still probably a good value for what we have here in Lindon, so.
Thanks for that research.
Very helpful.
Potential property purchases, the Thornton property we've talked about a little bit, and just as an FYI, we've ordered the appraisal. It should be done next week, and then we'll circle back with the council on that and see where we're at. We've reached out to UDOT to see how that money that they've earmarked is potentially being used from the 200 North signal and applied to this. We're just asking for something in writing so that we can verify that we can use that for property acquisition or for the signal, or however they will allow us to use the money. We will add Lindon Elementary site to this list of potential property purchases and see what we can do there. We've got some right-of-way on 700 North for a traffic signal that the mayor's been good to try to work on that. That's been a challenge. And yeah, some other things that we're keeping an eye on, so. Chase, any info that you were able to come up with there?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, circling back to you really quick.
Sure, yeah. So assuming 52 weeks in a year, 6 days per week at 13 hours per day, using the numbers from 2024, fiscal year 2024, the community center cost per operating hour is approximately $205, and the revenue that we get from in fiscal year 2024 is approximately $13.01 per operating hour. So it's pretty heavily subsidized. Like I didn't do a percentage, but I can do that real quick if you want. Sorry, it's like 6%, I think.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Any other needs, issues, specific budget requests, desires by the council you guys want to bring out?
Would love to hear if you have any particular goals in the community going forward.
Well,
for
I'd mentioned
next
it in
year.
the city council meeting
Yeah.
before, but the Lindon Boulevard name change,
Yeah,
I think that would be a cool thing to do. I don't think it would be lots of money by any means, but
You made any headway looking into that?
I'm scheduled to talk with someone, yeah, and actually Pleasant Grove City, some of their council members, I've chatted with them, they would like
just
it as
change it
well.
to.
So they're favorable to it.
Let me know
Yeah.
what I can do.
And then when it turns north and actually goes north, then it's the North County Boulevard.
Exactly. Branding, and the other thing we've talked about is the interchange, the future interchange with the slip ramps needs to have Lindon exit on it this time, for sure.
East, are you talking to Geneva, to State, to further for that?
The I-15
No,
interchange?
Linden Boulevard.
Oh,
You're
700
saying
North,
over to the- No,
Until you
no.
hit Pleasant Grove.
yeah,
To
until you hit the intersection.
interchange That, where they've
I'm
done all the
talking
work.
east,
Oh, east.
the other end.
Oh,
Do you go to Geneva? Do you go to State Street? Do you-
end of State Street.
Okay.
That whole lane.
Curious.
If 20%
Yeah.
to the aquatic center of the park's fee, and we expect 945, there's 189,000. We had asked before how much of the aquatic center improvement could come from park tax.
Oh.
If we have 945,000 and we're allocating 20% there, that's $189,000.
All right, out of your 636 or something. Okay, thank you. Anything else, council?
Do we have anything for our nature center far enough down the road that we haven't quite?
We need to tidy things up with UVU on the MOU agreement, on funding. So there's the $5 million federal earmark, and then the ULA, I just had a meeting today. Representative Bram, so there was some jockeying that happened in the legislative session. There was I don't know how much you guys want to get in the weeds on the politics, but the ULA was there was a bill that was written to try to roll the ULA into FFSL, which would kind of cut the legs off of it as an entity that could operate and have, funding go through FFSL and then operations. And so that got hopefully headed off at the pass. Senator Brammer, Senator McKell kind of worked on that. And then as far as the 15 million that needs to match on that, that's an appropriation that they're going to be working on either through leveraging a series of grants, both state and federal, or an appropriation from the state legislature. So it's probably likely the funding is still going to take beyond this legislative session, possibly into the 2026 cycle. But everyone's still very, very committed to it. It's considered a very high priority for UVU. President Tumina, I've met with her Adam, I think Jake, you came along to one of those, so it's a high priority for UVU and all the parties involved. So it's just a little bit more of a long game to get everything to come together. So I think, Adam's did a good job sending over touch points with the UVU folks to try to tighten that up. So I think just because the funding is still in progress, we'll see where that goes. We'll keep you guys posted. All right, Adam, anything else? All right, well, just in conclusion, thank you so much, everybody. I just want to take a moment to sincerely thank each and every one of you, especially staff, your hard work preparing for this budget. This is, I think we can all nod our heads in a big yes as council members. This is incredibly sophisticated, amazing data and information to give us to work together and prepare for this budget cycle. So thank you so much. And
Makes it a lot easier to make.
yep, you
driven
guys have an
decisions.
amazing
Thank you.
expertise. We have the right people on the bus heading these departments, no doubt. Just your attention to detail and your commitment also, like Adam mentioned, just holding Orem to their contract, showing really excellent fiscal responsibility. It's just really, really appreciated from all of you. And so just want to extend my gratitude also to you, City Council. You guys all work so hard and really do care. And so to quote Elon Musk, we have competence and caring. Right here. No, I think everyone's serving. So anyway, we just appreciate this guidance to help make our decisions, and it's an amazing team. And I think we all can attest as we talk with other groups that work together in different capacities in government, especially our esprit de corps, our sense of family, as Jake mentioned a couple times, is really remarkable. So thank you, everyone, so much. All right, so we'll move forward, working together on this. So
We need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. I
okay,
did it
we have a
anyway.
motion by Councilmember Broderick, seconded by Councilmember Stewart. All in favor? I don't know, we didn't really have a motion to.
Aye, anyway.
Okay, aye. Call.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you, man. Any updates on any of our lawsuits?
We're still plugging through. I don't know what's happened to Matt Church. I think he's just gotta be buried in the session.
Yeah.
So I've sent him now a couple emails and just haven't heard back. But that's, they're not rattling the chains, so. But we did get a comment.
Birthday.
We did, that they were interested now in that route.
And finding a way to settle something.
Yeah, maybe Friday or Saturday.
So we'll keep on top of it, so.
You just leave all the tables and chairs and get it tomorrow. The only other thing I said to, they had already sent in that letter to Grover. The only thing I said was, well, like the equity budget meeting, that's such a problem. I've heard some different.
Look at that model.
Then let's just keep the original language. It says there's a,
How you doing?
that you're supposed to have transportation costs. And then we can throw in a chip to say, this is what we mean by infrastructure scope. I mean, either way, I'm just like, it's like that'd be harder for you to be upset on if we're really gonna go with, well, it's how it was. I'm like, so if you want, just do that. And then we'll go back to the original. But it had already gone in, like, it's fine. But I thought I saw that Senate Bill 188 had already cleared the Senate. So I don't know what these modifications are meant to be by the House.
I would have been there if I got to,
A lot of bills do have tweaks made.
So what was it? I'm learning how to read the status thing. It was like, there were 25 votes and only 4 abstention, like 4 people who didn't vote. So then I was just a little bit like, what are we doing? It's done.
So my daughter is coaching.
School district modifications. So this week I've been thinking about talking to on the bill. Yeah. So I saw Senate passed third reading, Senate to House, House received from Senate. So he's hoping to modify it here, if they passed it here.
I didn't know, I mean, that's the kids going on. They said on the phone.
And look, it's so distinct strat machinery.
Coaches can do, coaches even in young soccer, they want to stay in one and have one person that runs the field.
Yeah, but why, I mean, but then vote against it, man. Don't just, yeah, these are the people that say, no, they abstain. I would have appreciated, like, and I was like, man, this is the one thing. They see you. Yeah, so that's why I was confused, because it looked like it had cleared, but maybe if they're trying to modify it in the House, but then how do you modify a law that gets passed in one chamber, then does it have to go back to Senate?
I don't know, I'm not talking about all of
My understanding, so
You know, thank you so much, you're so nice.
but I could be wrong, but I think so it goes through a committee, and then it goes to one.
Thank you.
Then it goes to, so the Senate passes it, I think it then goes to a House committee.
Which seems like it would.
Yeah, so then it has to pass out of that committee, and then it goes to the full floor of the House. And then if they make any amendments, it goes back to the Senate.
So maybe they're trying to amend it again.
Well, lo and behold, it was through nobody.
As I was on my way
So he
here.
calmed down.
And they are going guns blazing to eliminate the reimbursement, open-ended late check they feel. And then I said, well, what about your WPU? And they said, no, what they're proposing that we need to flesh out actually is basically there's like. An unassigned or unallocated capital account. And from that, it would get divided, so you would have, for example, right now, an unallocated. Divided based on students, and you would take a percentage of that, or $60 per student head, whichever amount is greater. And then that would be the starting seed money for each district to, she said, we have to rebrand everything too. Anyway, but that whole, she said, but if you guys are gonna be going for reparations.
Yep. I know, I'm like, how much of this cleaning up are we doing tonight, and how much are we putting off till tomorrow? I think they scope.
They go up in that corner?
The round tables are in there.
Oh.
Sometimes they bring them from somewhere else, like Bell.
Center right here.
We can do that some more. Alex brought him over from the community center, so we can do this tomorrow.
kind of more of a leadership mouthpieces to kind of talk with them on some things. And then I was talking with Mayor Young today. Or they're like, let's just have the mayors be the mouthpieces. But I said, but also with them, it's,
always gonna complain.
they have people who've been passionately involved and like in the weeds on this for ages, you know, like Julie and Heather. You know, so, and I just said, well, I know you and obviously Jen Gale and
That's a-
Marty have all
that's a hard-
been.
It's just
focused on it
tricky
too.
because it's like,
Yeah.
I only saw a box.
I think if there was an intention to come, because like when I talked to Adam, I was like, if this were to start over,
Yeah.
right, and we went back to this notion of dividing assets, dividing liabilities, help me see how
You know, and I don't think I've ever had
what
one
we're
person.
suggesting isn't,
I'm sensitive to it
you know, do,
because of my
or do
any
taxable,
fee increase,
like,
just
do one of
because
those,
of.
but not
I
alternatives. And like this thing with the reimbursement, I think there's a part of them that gets it.
Is no different than me.
Even Stratton, when I talked to him about it, he's like, you know, there's language here, and he's like, well, yeah, that's there because it's to help prevent these
More
cases.
well-off.
Yes, to like ditch them and say, oh, sorry. So I'm like, it's just a little bit of passing
Well,
on
that's what I
logic.
brought to Julie. I said, Julie, we shouldn't just be focusing on this through the lens of ASD. This is
The whole
legislation
state.
this is legislation that needs to have a framework and a process that's appropriate statewide, not just our nuanced little tribalistic stuff that's happening. And I said, so don't you think that philosophically there needs to be a conversation about if a more well-off group of cities are like, see ya, that the leftover one has a ramp of survival? And she said,